The Shelby Township Board of Trustees meeting here on August 19th, 2014. Here to lead us in prayer and also the Pledge of Allegiance is Father Leo Capacia from St. Raphael of Brooklyn Orthodox Church. Thank you, Father.
Distinguished members of the Shelby Township Board of Trustees and fellow citizens in attendance this evening, let us bow our heads. Dear Lord our God, we ask that you give wisdom and understanding to the trustees who have been placed in civil authority over the people who reside in Shelby Township. We ask and we pray that through the actions of this distinguished board, that you permit us to live in peace and tranquility, untroubled by the evils of this world. And dear Lord, to the members of the board, please give wisdom and integrity in their appointed positions to promote the well-being and living standards of the citizens of our township. We further ask that you watch over our country and our township and keep us all from those things that would harm us and our families. We ask through the power of the Holy Spirit, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, since I still have the podium, I have a special, and with the permission of the distinguished supervisor, Mary, I have a presentation. This has been sitting in my wife's, Mary's, cedar chest for 38 years. And so, Richard. And the distinguished members of the Board of Trustees, this bicentennial flag, which is 38 years old, is being presented as a keepsake to the Shelby Board of Trustees from the celebration of our 1976 bicentennial festival. I had the honor of being one of the co-chair. May I suggest that if possible, that this flag be displayed somewhere in the township complex in recognition of the hundreds of Shelby Township volunteers who work so diligently to make our township bicentennial celebration such a huge success 38 years ago. God bless everybody, and especially the board, and may you live to honor your forefathers and to do the right things for this township.
Father Capacia, thank you very much. Much, and our vet events coordinator happens to be here today, Mr. Phil Randazzo. We will find a spot for this, I'm sure, and I'm going to put it in your hands, and maybe we can talk about it tomorrow and hang that very proudly. Thank you very much, Father Capacia and Mrs. Capacia. Nice seeing you. Thank you very, very much. Well, obviously, this crowd here tonight is because of the oil gas exploration project, which has been an ongoing project in our township near 25 Mile and DeQuinder roads for the better part of the last month. First, I'd like to thank the many residents who have contacted me in my office over the past month, voicing concerns, offering suggestions, and providing feedback to me and other officials within the township. Your voice in this matter has been the driving force for all the initiatives we have undertaken to ensure that this situation is managed best as afforded by law. Those efforts will help protect our neighbors across Shelby Township from similar situations and hardships. Tomorrow night, we will have a town hall meeting to discuss this oil drilling in greater depth and detail. In fact, I see that we have Miss Denise, I want to say this name right, DeMarc, right? DeMac, I'm sorry. But she's here with us. She's a resident, and she's also the organizer for this meeting tomorrow. So, Denise, if you want to come up and tell us a little bit about this meeting, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Yep.
Good evening. Tomorrow we have an emergency town hall meeting for the residents of Shelby Township with a Q&A session. Tomorrow being August 20th, 2014 at 6:30 p.m. at the Palazzo Grande at 54660 Van Dyke Avenue in Shelby, obviously, Township. This meeting was agreed to by the concerned residents that had organized one meeting, and Shelby Township Supervisor Rick Stathakis that had the meeting, and then we combined the meeting together to accommodate all concerns at this important issue that's going to impact our area. This discussion will be on drilling for oil and gas in Shelby Township in a residentially zoned area. We ask that all concerned residents are invited to attend and to ask questions and voice their comments and concerns regarding the current well site near 25 in DeQuinder and other future well sites as well, and the planned production facility and transferring of oil via pipeline in the residentially zoned areas of Shelby. Dr. Chris Grobel of Grobel Environmental was invited by the residents to speak at this meeting. Mr. Grobel is a PhD and an expert in his field. He teaches at MSU and has worked for the DEQ. He's going to present a no-nonsense, clear and thorough presentation on the environmental impacts of oil drilling in our area. His presentation will be from 6:30 to 8 p.m. His presentation will probably be 20 minutes, and then it's all going to be Q&A after that. West Bay Exploration from Traverse City, Michigan was invited. Their presentation will be from 8 to 9:30 or 10 o'clock. Again, another short presentation and then Q&A, I believe. Other distinguished guests will be at attendance as well at the Shelby Township, as well as the Shelby Township Board of Trustees. Light refreshments will be served. Please come. Your presence is powerful. Our unity is strong. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, I actually will be in Chicago with Standard & Poor's. I'm the treasurer, and I will unfortunately not be able to make the meeting, but I have a good excuse. It's a critical financial rating meeting with Standard & Poor's, but as I've answered a lot of your emails, I have visited the site, and we are keeping in touch, so I'll be with you there in spirit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you very much. And also, Mr. Mack insists that we bring cookies, chocolate chip cookies. So I guess if there's a good reason to come, that may be one, right? Thank you very much. And by the way, thank you for your efforts in organizing this meeting, because I know it's taken a lot of time, and I know a lot of you have been behind this. So whoever you are, I want to thank you. Anyway, my hope is that this meeting will serve to address all the rumors and misinformation, fears, and concerns surrounding this oil gas exploration operation here in the township. And while many of the technical questions about the exploration operation are definitely better left until tomorrow, this evening I would like to address the role of your township and the Board of Trustees has played in the events up to this point. I was first made aware of this exploration operation when I received an application notice on May 15th and then another application notice on July 10th, both from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, or better known as the MDEQ. The only difference in these two notices was a slight modification in oil gas exploration location within the same residential neighborhood. Both of these application notices from the MDEQ stated its intention for an application for a permit to drill and operate an oil and gas well near 25 Mile Road and DeQuinder roads in Shelby Township. This proposed drilling was already under MDEQ consideration, and notification was sent to offer allowance for my comments about this. I asked Township Attorney Rob Huth on both occasions what, if anything, the board could do with these applications in order to influence this oil exploration operation, and the answer was the same both times: nothing. Obviously, the MDEQ oil gas exploration permit in Shelby Township has caused a great deal of discomfort and concern for our neighbors in this beautiful community. I received a lot of feedback from local residents who were upset because they were surprised by this and wished they had been notified of the applications. But as law stands, and it's not only the law, but also through a series of events, I learned that not only can a township not prevent the drilling, as Mr. Huth advised me last May, we also cannot expect to receive notice of final approval or notice that drilling is about to begin. Going forward, I pledge that this element of surprise will never happen again because of new policies which we have already instituted as a Board of Trustees. When I learn that an application or approval is in process, my office will share this new information with our residents in order to keep everyone in an affected area up to date on the facts and to dispel rumors. We will share such information as we are doing now on our website, across social media, and traditional media. Mr. Huth informed me that because of state law, local ordinances such as zoning ordinances were rendered null and void in regard to oil and gas exploration. This left your Township Board of Trustees with absolutely no recourse in stopping this process, since all applicants that are within legal guidelines are approved regardless of outside comments, and all applications that are not within legal guidelines are dismissed regardless of outside comments. And here with us tonight is Mr. Fitch from the MDEQ, if you would like to come up, and I think you might have something to say about that as well.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight. I realize I'm probably not the most popular guy in the room right now, but I do want to try and share some information with you. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about the rights and the regulatory structure. I want to say first, I understand the concern. You know, the drilling process in particular is a pretty intensive process. Those that live in that vicinity know it's a 24-hour-a-day process. There's diesel engines, there's truck traffic. After the conclusion of drilling operations, things quiet down, and actually wells are pretty unobtrusive. They should be. Is it a risk-free operation? No, and I would never tell anybody that. It's like anything we do as human beings. There's a certain amount of risk involved with anything any kind of industrial activity. Going out there on the road in your car is risky. Our job as a DEQ is to make sure that the environment, natural resources, public health and safety, and property are adequately protected during those drilling and production operations. And I think we've got a pretty good record of it. If you go back to what I like to characterize as our modern era of regulations, going back to about 1989, we've had 14,000 wells drilled during that period. Not one instance of contamination of a water well or contamination of surface water related to any of those 14,000 wells. Do we have legacy problems? Yeah. It's just like any industry. But, you know, we've evolved, our regulations have evolved, and today we have a very safe, comprehensive, and thorough body of regulations. Now, let me talk a little bit about the property rights involved here. The U.S. Constitution and Michigan Constitution both guarantee citizens the right to utilize their property. What that means in terms of oil and gas is that a governmental entity, whether it's a state or local or whomever, the federal government, cannot flat out deny someone the right to benefit from the oil and gas that may be under their property. The state of Michigan tried that back in 1987. We denied access to oil and gas deposits by a company over on the west side of the state. We ended up losing that battle in court, and we ended up with a judgment against us to the tune of $90 million. So I know there's a lot of people that would like to say, let's give control to the local government. I want to tell you that the local government is not in a position either to just flat out deny the right to for people to benefit from oil and gas on their property, whether that's the mineral owner, the landowner, or a company that leases those property rights or those oil and gas rights from the landowner. So really the challenge is to make sure it's managed properly and protectively. There's some misperceptions about the exclusion of townships from zoning for oil and gas. We are hearing people say that started in 2011. Actually, the exclusion goes back to 1943 when the first Township Zoning Enabling Act was enacted by the legislature. The legislature determined that in those cases, in townships and counties, the state, the supervisor wells, should have exclusive jurisdiction over those operations. And there's several reasons for that. Primarily is that oil and gas, like other minerals, can't be moved. You can't, if you want to zone, let's say, for a gas station or something, you can exclude gas stations from a certain zoning district in your jurisdiction, because they can move it out somewhere else, and then that landowner can use that property for other purposes. That's not the case with minerals. Minerals are where they were put there by nature or by God or whoever your concept is. And, you know, we can try to move a drilling location somewhat, but there's some practical limitations how far you can actually move a drill rig to still access that oil and gas deposit. So those are constraints we have to operate under, same constraints any governmental entity has to operate under. And the legislature recognized that back in 1943. So it wasn't just a recent thing. So that's where we are. We're going to pledge to do our best to make sure that there's no unnecessary adverse impacts to anybody from this operation. And we also want to be transparent. It's been difficult for us to really find a mechanism to get the word out to people where they can access it. We have a weekly permit list that's on our website, but you have to know to go and look for it there. That tells you when we receive an application. You can view the application out there. You can get further information on it, and we'll provide you all the information we have. But we are bound by law to follow the mandates that we have. So with that, I would encourage you to contact our office if you have any other questions. I'll stick around here tonight for a while at least. I do apologize for being here late. I ran into some hellacious weather and some bad traffic tie-ups, but I'm glad I could make it, and thanks for having me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Fitch. Also, I can't say enough about the strong support and hard work from State Senator Jack Brandenburg and State Representative Pete Lund as they continue their fight to change this state law so that this situation that we find ourselves in currently never happens again. And coincidentally, this afternoon, I received a letter from Governor Snyder's office as a follow-up letter I wrote to him August 11th, requesting a meeting with myself and our residents to discuss the effects of oil wells in residential areas, and we are working to set up this meeting as soon as possible. So look on our website. When we have information, we will continue to actually advertise that through the means that we do currently. But as the law stands now, and as Mr. Fitch stated, again, there is currently a minimum standard set in order to receive an oil gas exploration and operation permit in any area of the state, including residential zones. And once that standard is met, there is nothing a township or county or private citizens or even the MDEQ can do to stop that exploration. So, of course, the horses are out of the barn since the state took our barn doors right off the hinges, but your Board of Trustees is working to better safeguard the township in the future with the following actions. And first, and Ed, if you could put these up. First, a new information request protocol every 2 weeks between my office and the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality will ensure that all residents know if a new oil gas exploration is being considered within the township by the DEQ. This includes applications and approvals. And this first email request was sent last week, and as I said, it will be sent every 2 weeks thereafter. And we have confirmed via telephone that the MDEQ has received our first request. Second, as I stated earlier, the Supervisor's Office will share any and all information concerning potential oil and gas exploration projects on our website as well as through social and traditional medias. I think we're doing that now thanks to the help by many of you. Third, our legal team headed by Rob Huth is working closely with Jim Olson, a renowned environmental attorney specializing in municipalities' needs. And I first heard of Mr. Olson actually through many of you in and around the oil gas exploration project. I did call him and talk to him. I liked him a lot. Sounded like he had a good background, so we hired him. And I understand Mr. Huth and he are have made a lot of progress. But having him on board will provide our elected officials the best possible tools to fight future oil gas exploration so that that does meet our township zoning ordinances. Number 4, a 6-month moratorium to restrict further drilling while Representative Peter Lund and Senator Jack Brandenburg work to change a state law to protect our residents from future oil gas exploration. And that'll be presented tonight, by the way. Changes to state law would make it harder, if not impossible, for oil gas exploration to take root in residential neighborhoods in Shelby Township and actually throughout Michigan.
Mr. Stathikas, could I speak to that?
Yes.
You know, I heard Mr. Fitch from MDEQ, and I do appreciate him coming here tonight, and I understand that some ways his hands are tied, but one of the comments was the challenge is to manage this operation properly. This has not been managed properly, and I'd like this board tonight to consider a moratorium so we can get our arms around this and so that any other projects are managed properly. Here's what my complaint. The oil industry says we need 24/7 drilling rights or else this can't go forward or else it's dangerous. What they get is they get 24/7 drilling rights, they take the drill down, but they continue 24/7 with all kinds of operations that don't need to happen 24/7. Many of us in our neighborhood were woken up early Saturday morning with trucks honking their horns, banging gates, driving up and down, and the only reason they wanted to do that is save money, crews are there, move out. Has nothing to do with the industry demand to drill. So my proposal to the board tonight is let's get a moratorium because the state of Michigan has not been able to manage it to our residential needs. We understand you can't move the minerals, but we believe our police power in this township gives us the right to regulate how it goes forward. If you guys have the law, I'd like you to put up the first screen, please. The current law, as you'll note, states that the township shall not regulate, control, drilling, or completion or operation of the gas well. It's MCL .3205, 125.3205. So the problem we have in the township is that the state said, you're handcuffed, we'll handle this for you. What's happened since, will you put up the next screen, please? Many of you got a voice message or a call from someone from the state of Michigan, not the MDEQ's office, saying, hey, you know what, your township officials blew it, your township attorney blew it, you should have enacted an ordinance saying there's serious consequences and this activity shouldn't have gone on. Well, the fact of the matter is that site that was given to many of you, many of my neighbors, in fact, refers to mining. We don't have mining going on here, folks. We have oil drilling. And the site that you were told that could have prevented this could not have prevented this. The only shot, you can take that down now, please. The only shot this community has to get its arms around this is to pass a moratorium, exercise our police powers. We now have evidence that what the state has enacted doesn't work. We saw it. Other communities that pass moratoriums are going to fail because they've not had an opportunity to see it doesn't work. So if this board would please consider a moratorium tonight, give us 6 months, we'll ask our state rep, we'll ask him and our state senator to get the job done in Lansing. But you know what? If they can't, we'll get it done right here at this board because I believe the township has police power regulation and can get its arms around this drilling. And I ask the board tonight to consider this. Thank you, Mr.
Very much, Rob. Mr. Huth, I know you have literally been up all night, many nights, and I know you told me that the only time you get to rest is when you're talking to me. I didn't know I put people to sleep. But anyway, I want to thank you for the good work that you and Mr. Olson and all of you have done in this room because it's actually your ideas that made a lot of this come about. So I do appreciate it. Incidentally, if you feel the same way to keep oil gas exploration out of our neighborhoods, then please contact your state representatives and voice your support for Jack Brandenburg and Peter Lund in their efforts to change this law. And also, number 5, I talked about 4 things that we're doing as a board, and there's a 5th one. If you could please put that up, Ed. Number 5, a formal emergency response policy has been established for any and all public safety threats associated with the oil gas exploration near 25 Mile and DeQuinder roads. This will ensure that all of our residents feel safe and secure within their homes, or as safe and secure as you can feel with an oil well there, and the boundaries, of course, in Shelby Township. Here with us tonight is Fire Chief Jim Swinkowski. If you can talk to us a little more about that emergency response system, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, board members, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, the state is in charge of enforcement, so our job as the fire department is for response. There is an action plan in place, and typically the way that plan works is at this point when they're drilling the well, there's a lot of safety regulations that go into place with the backflow preventers and things like that to prevent anything going on during that process. Moving forward, the only thing I can really address tonight is the media reports that you guys have heard about explosions and things of that nature that could happen there. That is really not the case. Our enforcement basically is we can make a site visit to ensure compliance with safety regulations, and that goes to basically how far structures are from the oil well. The International Fire Code states a structure needs to be 100 feet. The DEQ, I believe their regulations are 300 feet. During looking at the site plan, the closest structures were 500 feet, well outside of the set parameters for that. And as the gentleman from DEQ stated, there's always a risk when dealing with oils and other types of petroleum products. But oil is not at the top of that list when it comes to dangers for explosions and things like that. Obviously, the oil industry is a very heavily regulated industry, and that's to ensure safety for people that are in and around it. And the biggest example that I can take on that is gasoline. Gasoline is by far one of the most flammable and explosive chemicals we have out there. And yet, every day, tens of thousands of gasoline tankers crisscross our nation. And the process of unloading gasoline trucks at the station, as a public safety official, that's what makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because there's a lot of static electricity that's charged, that is generated during this process. And for me, that is where a lot of the danger lies. But with proper safety regulations and the policies that are in place, this goes on thousands of times a day, and you don't hear of any explosions because of the proper, the proper safety techniques. Obviously, the process that's going on at the well is pretty much over and done with. As far as the drilling, the releases of gases, and things along that nature. We all know how flammable the gas is, but because of safety regulations, and we're so used to seeing this in our life every day, how many times you driving up or down our roads, you see the petroleum, the propane tankers, the liquid oxygen tankers. These are all, when it comes to the fires and explosions, they are higher on the scale of an accident waiting to happen than the oil. So at that point, like I said, the drilling is done, the oil well is capped. And I know a few people have talked to me tonight and said that there's another rig going in. Yeah, it's there. Because I've been on the phone with their safety director, because obviously I have to be aware of what's going on because we have to respond. That is what they call a finishing rig. It's a truck-mounted rig. The job of that truck, and they said it could take a few days up to about a week or so. It is putting basically the lining of the tube down the well, and I believe the well is somewhere around 5,400 feet. So they will be putting tubing down the well. And they said, based on how it goes, it's about a couple of days to maybe a week or so. So, like I said, I will be around later on tonight if you have any more questions on it.
Thanks, Chief Jim Swinkowski. So all of these tools that we've been put in place during the last 4 weeks have been crucial. A pivotal part in making all this happen has been the feedback and support the board has received from you, our constituents. And this is why I would like to take this time to again thank our amazing residents for their support throughout this process. I feel truly blessed to be the Township Supervisor for Shelby Township, and there is no other community in Metro Detroit or the state, as far as that goes, as far as I've experienced, with a more motivated, involved, and in-touch community than our terrific township. And this situation, while very unfortunate, again proves to me and the rest of our region that the reason we have such a great community is because the people who call it home. So thanks for listening. And Mr. Jim Swinkowski, Chief, if you could come up one more time on a different topic. I know there's been some flooding in and around Macomb, and I know we've had some here in Shelby Township as well. Can you let the residents know what kind of relief may be available and what they should do if they have had a flooding situation?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Yes, obviously a week ago we had a torrential downpour that had, as they call it, a 500-year storm that resulted in a lot of damage. The Macomb County Office of Emergency Management is trying to collect data on any houses that have been damaged by either flooding or on the outside, cracks in the walls, whatever you have. If your house or you know of anybody's house who has been damaged, we urge them to either go to the Shelby Township website. There is a link there that'll bring you to the Macomb County Emergency Management's website to fill out a form. At this point, it's just for documentation purposes only. It only takes a few minutes to fill out. It doesn't require, it's just estimates on your name, your address, your house, and what your estimate is on the damage. It doesn't have to be a concrete in stone number from your insurance company. At this point, we're being told there is no federal dollars or FEMA dollars that would be available to anyone yet. That comes on a federal declaration, which has not been issued. But we are urging, if you know anybody that has received damage from the rains last week, to please go to the website and at least get the information documented for the Macomb County. We'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. Paula Filer.
Here.
Michael Flynn.
Here.
Stan Groch is here. Nick Nightingale.
Here.
Rick Stefficus.
Here.
Paul Veier.
Here.
Doug Wozniak.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Clerk. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda that has been presented?
Mr. Supervisor, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I move to approve minutes July 15, 2014. It's for a board meeting. July 23rd, 2014. It's for work session. Move to grant a request to Utica Shelby Kiwanis Club, request permission to conduct its annual peanut drive on September 18, 19, 20, 26, 27, 28, and October 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th, 11, and 12. Motion to grant the request to Utica Shelby Kiwanis Club to conduct their annual peanut drive at storefronts on September 18, 19, 20, 26, 27, 28, and October 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th, 11, and 12, and to waive all fees and bonds provided all solicitors are properly identified. The next one is C, Play Place for Autistic Children request permission to solicit for donation on September 18, 19, 20, 25, 26, and 27. Motion to grant the request of Play Place for Autistic Children to solicit at storefronts on September 18, 19, 20, 25, 26, 27. The chartered Township of Shelby will be included on the organization's liability and hold harmless waiver. And D is motion to approve bill runs in the amount of $2,650,089.55.
Support.
That's the end of consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Mr. Grote, supported by Mr. Veier. Could you please take the roll?
Stan Grote made a motion, yes. Mr. Veier?
Yes.
Doug Wozniak?
Yes.
Paula Filer?
Yes.
Michael Flynn?
Yes.
Nick Nightingale?
Yes.
Rick Stefficus?
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Grote. Now we'll go to the agenda. Ellen, could you put the agenda? There we go. Thank you. This is the agenda for tonight. I'll just kind of go through it quickly. Item number 1. Now, we have resolution supporting changes for Section 205, Section 2 of the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. Mr. Huth, I think that will be replaced by the 6-month moratorium that you just talked about a little while ago. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I also need board motion on another issue relating to the well, please.
We can get to that after we're done with item number 1. So we'll make that part of item number 1 or a subsection of that, if that's okay with you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then number 2 will be the 2015-2020 Capital Improvement Plan. Mr. Glenn Nguyen, our planning director, will be here to explain that. And he'll also be here to explain a Vanguard Equity Management LLC rezoning application requesting a change in zoning from C2 linear retail to R12 multiple family, low rise for property located on the west side of Hayes Road, south of 21 Mile Road. The 4th item will be Lakeside Boulevard Homes, a preliminary planned unit development for property located on the north side of Lakeside Boulevard between Shaner Road and Hayes Road. The 5th item will be a vehicle purchase. Captain Stanberry is here with us to explain that. Number 6 will be the 24-mile road construction. Mr. Huth will probably fill us in on some detail to authorize a $455,000 investment. 7th item will be a subdivision resurfacing project on Judy Road. And the 8th item will be a subdivision reconstruction project on Pierce Road. A lot of road projects here tonight. 9th item will be 2014 local road improvements. 10th item will be planning and zoning department reorganization. Item number 11 is promotion in planning and zoning in the position of administrative secretary. 12th item is a department head wages. 13, elected official compensation. And 14, a request for board approval of the 9/11 communication tech collective bargaining agreement, which I think actually we came to an agreement about a month ago. So that is the agenda. And if I could have, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Grote. Mr. Flynn, go ahead.
Move to approve the agenda as presented and described by you.
Support.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Flynn, supported by Mr. Grote. Is there any public comment regarding this motion? Is there any board comment?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Huth, you are conversing with someone about the construction of 24-mile road repaving.
Yes, sir.
Would it be in the best interest of the community to consider maybe completing some sewer lines while the road is torn up? Would that be something you could run by the contractor and maybe?
Yeah, this is the right time to do it. We were actually talking today at 4:30 about the what's happening is it's going to be a new water line put in from DeQuinder to Romeo Plank on 24-mile road. Is the sewer issue, is it a sewer issue on that, on 24?
Yes. I was wondering if we could do some connection while the road is torn up. It looks like to me that certainly would save a lot of money if...
Yes, this is the right time to ask, right.
This is definitely the right time to ask. I did ask that question twice to Mr. Steve Mancini. He is the contractor. Rickman is the construction company. He stated because the talks right now with Detroit are very sensitive, we've actually changed the contract immensely from, well, I won't go through all the changes, but what they wanted to do was replace half the road. What we asked them to do is replace the entire road. And it was a long negotiation, and we finally reached an agreement that we think could work. Now, there's still a couple details we have to work out. But the question came up. I asked it. It was not my idea, but some other people came up with this question. Well, Mr. Mancini, why can't we put curbs and storm sewers in? And he said, well, because then we would have to use concrete. Then we would have to do curbs. This would be millions of dollars more. Right now, I think, Mr. Huth, we're talking about the entire project costing about $3.3 million, $3.2 million right in that vicinity. And also, we're talking about trying to get it down to 2 years because Detroit wanted to do it in 3. We think we figured out a way how to get it down to 2 years, and I hope we can do it in 2 years. But if we add curbs and sewers, we're talking millions more. I'm not saying we can't, but what I would like to do is go ahead with this particular motion, leave it on the agenda. I hope we can vote for it. And Mr. Vire, I think maybe perhaps you, and I would like to join you, we could join in and talk to Mr. Mancini in more detail about adding on to the project, but also keeping in mind that we don't want this torn up for years. But this would be the right time to talk. Is that okay?
I'm not against the motion as presented here. I just thought that if Mr. Ruth had some conversation with some people, it could be talked about. That's all.
And that's a very good notion, but I think we could maybe explore that in some more detail. So I do thank you for that. Any other comments about the agenda? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so this first agenda item, Mr. Huth, I'm going to let you explain it. Would somebody like to make a motion first of all for?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Filer. This is a motion for the 6-month moratorium. Go ahead.
I would move to support the moratorium as discussed by Attorney Rob Huth.
Support.
And Mrs. Filer, you did ask me before, and I thought that was a good idea. You also wanted to put on, in terms of policy, all the ideas our folks had out here. Could you, I think it was your idea to add that to the motion. So you don't have to read everything, but could you just simply state in your motion as you wanted to do?
Yes, I would like to add the new procedures as discussed and outlined by the supervisor regarding the communication of new drilling sites with the residents.
And Mr. Motion Second, could you second that?
Of course, yes.
Okay,
absolutely. You want me to read?
Yeah, go ahead and read the moratorium, if that would be okay. Thank you, Mr. Crow.
A moratorium resolution regarding all oil, gas, and other hydrocarbon exploration and related extraction activities in the township. Whereas the Township of Shelby, Charter Township, under the laws of Michigan, desires to maintain its long tradition of protecting the natural resources and environment within its boundaries and promoting compatible land uses. Whereas an increase in oil and gas and other mineral leases activity has been noted within the township and surrounding areas. And whereas township residents have brought to the attention of Township Board the residents' position that the current oil site adjacent to the residential district is incompatible use, leading to risk and concerns regarding adverse impact resulting from uncontrolled exploration and extraction activities within the township by those who purchase those mineral rights. And whereas the township has not previously been faced with the prospect of significant oil and gas exploration activity, and the township zoning ordinance and other ordinances may not satisfactorily control and regulate such activities. And whereas Michigan Township and Home Rule laws grant the township broad police power to adopt resolutions and ordinances to protect the public health, safety, general welfare, and property in the township, which needs to be reviewed and analyzed with regard to effective regulation of activities in order to protect against adverse risk and impact related or associated with oil and gas development within the township. And whereas the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act contains some limitation on the township's ability to regulate certainly operations related to the exploration and extraction of natural resources within the township, which will require further analysis in order to put effective regulations on those activities to protect. I have to stop because the tape stopped. All right, let me start again. Which will require further analysis in order to put effective regulations on these activities to protect the air, water, natural resources, and environment, and the compatibility of land users within township borders. Whereas Michigan statutes and law impose a substantive duty on the township to take responsible action to prevent or minimize likely degradation of the air, water, and natural resources or the public trust in those resources. And whereas certain aspects of oil and gas operation remain subject to township regulation. And whereas now, in light of recent exploratory drilling activities in the township now recognizes that applicable state of Michigan statutes and regulations are not sufficient to protect among other things, the health, safety, and well-being of township residents. So certainly aspects and activities associated with oil and gas development remain or must be subject to township regulations. And whereas in order to allow the township opportunity to investigate and develop appropriate regulations upon those aspects of oil and gas operation which the township is authorized to regulate, it is in the public interest to adopt a moratorium upon the issuance of permits by the township for oil and gas activities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that effective upon adoption of this resolution and for a period of 6 months through, do we have a date, Mr.
The 6 months from today, if we'll do the math when we adopt the resolution.
Okay. We'll put 6 months from now, except that in Township Zone Industrial District, IR, LM, HM, a moratorium is hereby established on the consideration, review, or action by all township entities, officials, employees, and or agents, or applications, proposals, requests, permits, approvals, zoning compliance, or certificates regarding of any oil and or natural gas drilling operation in the township that might be proposed or presented to the township, and that during the moratorium period, no drilling operation should be allowed in the township. This moratorium is not intended to infringe upon its jurisdiction to extent it has been reserved and sufficiently implemented by state or federal agency that have current jurisdiction over such subject. The township shall proceed promptly in due course to investigate and consider appropriate regulation upon oil and gas activities within the township. An aggrieved property owner or business petitioner may request and be entitled to hearing before the Township Board for the purpose of attempting to demonstrate that the moratorium will preclude all available economic use of their property or otherwise violate applicable provisions of the state or federal law. Said petition shall, in writing and directed to the Township Clerk, request a hearing that describes the grounds for the request. The hearing shall be held at the regular Township Board meeting within 30 days of the recipient of the receipt of the request. Upon concluding of a hearing, the Township Board shall determine whether the petitioner has made the required demonstration, and if so, shall grant relief from the moratorium. This moratorium does not apply to mining or extraction operation as defined in Section 13.32 of the Township of Shelby zoning ordinance. This moratorium also does not apply to the mining or extraction licensing and operation regulations being controlled by the Chartered Township of Shelby Code of Ordinance. Motion was made today, August 19th, and second to the above resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Groh. Mr. Huth, if you could just one more time explain, why couldn't we have passed this 6-month moratorium last week or last month or even last year?
I'm going to answer that, but before I do, I want to say one thing. The moratorium that Mr. Grote read had one change that his copy had that the Township Board copy did not have and that the resident email copy did not have. And I want to make sure the record's clear on that so we don't have a challenge on that. In paragraph 1, where it says, "Be it resolved," the copy that was circulated around the township this afternoon said that except in zoned industrial districts, I added parentheses naming the township industrial districts, which are IR, LM, and HM, so that it's clear on that issue. So people that were following along might say, wait, what's going on here? That is the only change from what was circulated earlier.
For the folks at home, can you explain what those acronyms are?
Yes, those 3 acronyms refer to light manufacturing, heavy manufacturing, and industrial research, I think. Got me, I hope. At any rate, those are the highest use zones in the township, and I didn't want someone to come back later and challenge this and say it's not clear as to what we meant when we said industrial zone districts. And the challenge gets me to answering your question, Mr. Stathakis. I'm going to ask this board, when we're done discussing this, to allow me to work with an attorney that is well-versed in environmental law. This board did that when we took on Ford and a number of other people regarding the Vistion site. You were kind enough, when you recognized I didn't know the area, which I was glad to say I needed help on, to let me retain somebody environmental. I'm going to ask you to do that tonight, but the first aspect of this is moratorium law. And I can tell you, I'm very comfortable with moratorium law. I represented a community that somebody came to the counter in the afternoon and handed in an application to open a strip club. That night, the community passed a moratorium on strip clubs. We litigated the case, federal courts, not just in Michigan, other states, on that issue. And what the court said to us is, where else could that community have strip clubs? And we said, there's 40 spots. The strip club owner said, wait a minute, there's other buildings on those spots. We said, that's not our problem, that's the strip club owners. And the court agreed. The next thing that happened was the court said, what damage do you have from strip clubs? And we answered that with an expert who talked about the problems and the crimes, things that are associated with it. We will not be able to respond to a challenge to this moratorium if we didn't have the issues that we've had. We now know firsthand, I know 457 feet from my bedroom window, what to expect when there's a drilling operation. So if we are challenged on this moratorium, we're going to say a couple things. We're going to say there's places this could be, industrial zone, and we are satisfied that the Constitution that was referred to earlier by the MDEQ gives us also some rights as a township community to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people that live here. And the current situation, status of the law, does not protect them. We believe we have a right to protect them, and we're going to put things in place to protect them based on this horror that we've witnessed in the last month in this community. So that's why it's stronger now. I ask you to please consider it, and we'll be ready to challenge or respond to any challenges to it. Thank you, Mr. Stathakis.
Go ahead.
One question, Mr. Huth. Any reason why are we exempting zone industrial district?
Well, my concern, Mr. Grote, is that if we're challenged on this and we say it can't be anywhere, it's a weaker case for us to defend. If we say it can be in appropriate places, I think we have a much better chance of having it held up by a court rather than the whole thing tossed out. So ideally, the drilling wouldn't be anywhere, but I think if we enacted all that, it makes what you're looking at tonight much weaker.
On the other hand, this could be challenged because we are making exceptions. I think 6 months moratorium across the board, I think would be appropriate. What will happen if the rig is put out on the outer perimeter of industrial property and homes are abutting that industrial property? We're still going to have a problem. You're still going to have a rig in your backyard, even though the rig itself will be industrial property. I'm not sure if I agree with that exception because, again, it could be argument that, well, you're making exception. There's exceptions. So I'm not sure. I'm asking you your legal opinion, and your answer will be satisfactory for me. But I just want to point that out to
well, to respond, I mean, the reality is there are activities that are allowed in an industrial zone, and we have to live with the fact that, for example, a stamping plant is allowed at some locations in the township, not in the others. And those people moving near an industrial zone may have some expectation that there'll be an industrial activity there, whereas really, when you look at this situation, the people that were moved in and purchased their home could not have had an expectation that they were going to accept the risk that an oil drilling rig would be right in their backyards. So I think it's different situation than what you raised. I would like to ban it completely if it was legally permissible to do so, but I think what you have right here is stronger.
Okay, what I'd like to do now is go to the folks, and maybe we can get some comments from you. And I do see that we have a few new faces out in the crowd, not too many. So let me just review our format. As always, you can address the board with as many comments and questions as you would like on a specific agenda item. And after you sit down, the board and its experts will answer all your questions in one block. This makes the information provided in response to questions and comments easier to digest, and it eliminates redundancy and a constant back and forth discussion, creating a more efficient and approachable meeting with an emphasis on civil dialogue. And also actions such as shouting down speakers at the podium, which I do not expect from anyone in this room, but I have to say this as part of our decorum, and other actions, they may violate our rules of decorum, which cannot be tolerated if we have an orderly and approachable meeting. Serious outbursts prevent the public from having a full opportunity to be heard, which in my opinion is the most important part of our rules of decorum, which are in place only if order cannot be restored through traditional means such as warnings. As a standard, at all of our board meetings, if traditional measures to restore order fail, we will recess a meeting until order is restored. And as I said, I don't anticipate any problems. These measures are in place just to ensure that the meeting remains a proper arena for civil sharing of ideas and principles. So I want to thank all of you in advance. And on that note, I will now go to the floor. If you have any questions or comments about this particular moratorium, come on up and ask. Now would be the time. Yes, sir, Mr. Churchill.
Ron Churchill, 52-811 Mountain Road. Mr. Supervisor, I guess this is for the lawyer, Mr. Huth. I've been hearing this word moratorium numerous times. Could you explain why a moratorium and not a resolution? On the other hand, you know, this smart meter thing has been brought up so many times, and you say a moratorium is no good. The township will only do a resolution and has only done a resolution. Why the change now? Why a moratorium and not a resolution in this case?
Thank you, sir.
And not in the smart meter case.
Mr. Huth.
Well, initially when the board agenda went out, we talked about doing a resolution, and a resolution is a request for action by our state legislators. The concern was that that may not be enough to solve this issue. We want to instead take action right now that will be effective as opposed to waiting for our state legislators to enact. Mr. Churchill raised the issue, why don't we have a moratorium on other issues? Well, in fact, we have. We did a moratorium on hookah lounges, and that gave us an opportunity to meet with the hookah lounge owners and discuss regulation that made sense for their industry and combated the concerns raised by our police department as some of the activity that was going on at the hookah lounges. So yes, okay, in a hookah lounge case, where we've decided not to take action is a moratorium with respect to smart meters. And I know many residents are passionate about smart meters, but just briefly, smart meters are inserted to advise the utility company of your utility usage. Since those can be put in without township approval, my view has been that a moratorium would have no effect, and instead we asked the Michigan Public Service Commission to consider an opt-out provision. Thankfully, they responded to ours and other communities' request, and smart meters has been handled by way of Michigan Public Service Commission telling residents that if they don't want it, they have an opportunity to opt out. So that's the difference between the two issues, sir.
Anyone else? Yes. Yes. If you could, yes, please. Thank you. Name and address.
Erica Mazurek, 5692 Fieldbrook Drive, Shelby Township. Does this moratorium do anything to protect us against a potential processing plant at 26 and Mound?
Is that it? Thank you. What about this processing plant? What kind of safeguards do we have against that?
None by this moratorium, frankly. This moratorium is on the issue of drilling. I've heard the same rumor that you did, that it was headed to 26 Mile Mound. We have not been informed of that. Of course, from the township's perspective, the number one goal would be that there not be a processing plant in a residential neighborhood. As I understand state law, and I'm just getting up to speed on the processing plants, they have to either put it where the well is, wow, what a nightmare, or into an appropriate zone district. But in terms of that processing plant and that rumor, this moratorium does not address that issue.
Other questions? Yes, in the back.
Eileen Shaughnessy, 55619 Monroe, Shelby. Is it just for new oil well sites, or is it for the Nino Home site? And two, is the moratorium on the pipeline or just oil wells? Like the pipeline along the bike path?
Mr. Huth?
It is for new sites. The question was the LeChurco site, if there was additional drilling activity going on at that site, this would apply. It does not apply to the drilling activity that's already occurred to that site, which, as I understand, is concluded. There is, you're right, Mrs. Shaughnessy, there is a pipeline that runs north of the property along the bike path trail that's been there since all of us moved in, and this moratorium does not affect the activities of that pipeline.
What a way to get to know your neighbors, huh? Okay. Yes. Okay, so the new oil site, is this under the new oil site would be safeguarded under this new moratorium? Is that the answer?
No, that's not the answer.
Okay.
The answer is that future drilling activities would be covered under this moratorium, but what's already, we've been led to believe the drilling is done at that site. That specific well is done. Future drilling at that property location would be covered, but not under that hole, because we understand it to be over.
Okay.
Norm J. Joe, Shelby Township. Mr. Supervisor, Board of Trustees, and Mr. Attorney and Engineer. The moratorium, I'm all in favor of that. That is a stopgap measure until we can resolve this situation as far as the future goes. I know we're stuck right now with the situation right now that has happened now. Now, one thing I want to throw at the board here is the fact that this particular developer has in the past done things to that area without getting permission a number of years ago. Without getting permits from the township, he clear-cut all the trees where the development is. That was number one. Number two, he never got any DEQ permits for that area. Number three, he put in his drains without getting any permission from the County Drain Commission, and he had to replace the drains that he had put in. And it was brought up by the DEQ he would have to replace the area that was dug up through the wetlands. He did replace these trees with scrub trees. Within a year, those trees were gone. So this particular developer has a past history of circumventing the proper procedures through the township board here and the proper departments. And as far as wells and so forth, this happened years ago when, prior to moving here to Shelby, there was a blowout up, I believe it was on Mulvey Road, and we lived over a mile away, and the flames from that explosion we could see at our house. And they couldn't do anything really until the gas lines were purged of the gas that was in the area. That's a major concern there too, with the residential area being so close. I just want to say I'm all for this moratorium until we can get this thing resolved properly. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. What I'll do is I'll start here and I'll just kind of make my way right to left.
Good evening, Board. Anthony Randazzo, 56733 Hartley Court, Shelby Township, Michigan. I live in Mr. Huth's subdivision, and I do agree a moratorium needs to be passed in light of what's going on. But the moratorium, as I read it, and I'm a lawyer just like Mr. Huth, it's got baby teeth. It needs adult teeth. We have Mr. Huth saying, and I agree with him, it's in his backyard. Things are going on. An operation is going on. He's hearing vibrations, noise, woken up on Saturday morning. The effect of the drilling is where you have the huge environmental risk. When that geyser comes through, when the cork is released, that's when the environmental concern is most risky. The wildlife, the people living in the environment, in the area, the neighbors. This moratorium has to be more than just drilling, because the operation is not going to stop. The activities ancillary to the operation are not going to stop. The pipeline that's going to be running through to the processing facility, wherever that happens to be, I assume it's going to be a light manufacturing, which, again, wouldn't be protected under this moratorium. That's not going to stop. I've experienced commercial traffic going in and out of that residential area every day. There's huge tanks sitting out there right now. The operation is continuing. This does nothing. I mean, it's great for the future. This does nothing to allow the township to investigate the health consequences as to what's going on so they can enact regulation. And I agree, and I agree that to a certain extent, this board, this township, may have its hands tied by the current legislation in place. There's a bill that's been introduced by Jack Brandenburg, which I believe the former resolution that isn't being presented tonight was going to back. I would back that as well. But
so what should we do, in your opinion?
What we should do in this, my opinion, is to expand this moratorium to include all activities ancillary to this operation. The reason being is because this has to give us some opportunity to investigate what effect. No one knows what's going on here. These people are in the dark. I'm in the dark. I'm a pretty smart guy. Went to college, got my bachelor's, went to law school. I'm not an oil and gas lawyer. But I can tell you what, no one notified me about what was going on. I see this big rig with these lights shining down in this beautiful neighborhood, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 homes. The vibration, the noise. I went back 7 o'clock on Tuesday of last week. I met with my neighbors, or maybe it was Thursday. And all of a sudden this noise came up, and the vibration. You can feel the vibration. You can feel, the neighbor said, you can feel the panels on my windows vibrate. When this drill gets tapped, that's when the serious consequences occur. And I know people want to say, well, we've had 40,000 wells and no incidents. Well, that's baloney. Because I can point to one in June of last year where West Bay was involved in an explosion. Now, yeah, it was a risk, but we don't want those risks near my neighbors, near my daughter walking down a path. That's why you put these things in areas that don't affect your neighborhoods, that don't affect the values of your home, that don't affect the livelihood of wildlife, of the environment. We don't know anything about this. I have no clue what they're doing. They haven't explained what they're doing. They're doing everything under the guise of, well, we got a permit from the MDEQ, so we're fine. Yeah, you know what? It's not fine. And although the law does say under 1253205 that, yeah, you can't issue permits. But you know what? That's the subsurface. And right now we're working on that in Lansing. But above the surface, you do have an ability to regulate. You do.
You're saying include trucking, all activities.
Trucking operations, through the other things that occur above the surface. You have the ability. It says so in the statute. And here's the deal. I've read the cases. There's not many outlining the scope of this statute and how it applies. You know what? I'd rather pass a moratorium with teeth. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the court won't uphold it. Okay. But we'll never know. So you know what? I think you all have a more responsibility to your constituents to do something right now to affect what's going on right now in these neighborhoods. And I would encourage the pass moratorium.
Okay, Mr. Ruth?
No, I just want to respond. I mean, Mr. Rendezzo, your firm does municipal work, right?
Absolutely.
I consulted extensively with your municipal lawyer department. Mr. Sechrist, of course, is a neighbor of mine. Your firm does great work, but I have ran through this issue with counsel from your firm that is working on a moratorium. It's not a conclusion where we just came up with this by ourselves. We consulted with the Metro Detroit firms that are working on this and came up with a consensus, not just in my head, but with other people, including folks from your firm that helped me with this. And the fact is that while it would be great to blanket and not allow anything, the more we throw in there, the tougher it is to be defended. You mentioned we can regulate the activities surrounding the drilling. I agree. We're on the same page. But if we can do it, my view is why put it in the moratorium, and if the moratorium gets scrapped, there goes our argument that we can regulate it. My view is we can do it anyway.
Well, why hasn't it been done then? Why hasn't it been done? We have people walking up and down, huge tankers going up and down. Why hasn't it been done? It has to be done. So let's start doing it. That's the first thing. The second thing is my partner, Dirk Berkeley, he's in Auburn Hills. He does city. He's got ordinances. He was going to do a moratorium, but they can pass an ordinance. They're a city. There's a constitutional question here.
Okay, so that's not relevant. I mean, fairness to us.
It's
not relevant.
No, but it brings an interesting issue because those waters haven't been tested quite significantly by the courts in this state. So again, I would rather have a moratorium with some bite to it than just have something because this has no effect on what's going on. That's my problem. It's got no effect. It's got some appease the crowd for right now. It has no effect on what's going on. Let's do something that actually stops what's going on in my neighborhood right now.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming up.
I'm on the same page. I want to stop what's going on in our neighborhood right now, and it's not about appeasing the crowd. It's about what we can present that is most likely to get our arms around the problem. It's great to suggest that other things should be in there. That's not the advice that that firm has given to other clients that it represents, okay? In fairness to us on this, we have now come up with something that has opportunity to be defended. I ask you to again consider passing it tonight.
Anyone else? Okay. Yes.
Okay, my name is Jennifer Panos. I live also in the same sub as Mr. Huth. And I have to address something that Mr. Fitch said. First of all, I find it incredibly insulting that you would compare this to the risks we take driving a car. Okay? Because when I get in my car, I'm in control, okay? And I'm wearing a seatbelt. I don't have a seatbelt now in my home for what you have placed next door. The other issue I have with you is, do you think that that makes us feel good?
If you could just address the board, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have an issue with people get to benefit from the exploration of oil and gas, and what about those of us that get to suffer from the exploration of oil and gas? One person's right should not override the rights of an entire neighborhood, multiple neighborhoods, because this is not just a Creekside Village problem. This is affecting 4, 5, 6, possibly more neighborhoods. So I have a real issue with that. I think it's a bad law. We have a saying in the neighborhood, this is a bad law. It needs to be changed. And the state put this rig next to our house, so the state needs to fix it. The state made us a guinea pig so that they could set a precedent, so that they could go to Ann Arbor, and they could go to Rochester, and they could go wherever else they wanted to go, because they did it in Shelby Township. So now you have a responsibility to stand up for us and be the guinea pig. Make yourselves the guinea pig, because we didn't have a say in it at all. Right what you wronged. When you brought this monster into our community, you didn't know, I guess, that this is what they were going to do. Well, now you know, and you better fight.
Thank you.
Denise DeMack, Shelby Township. I live in the same neighborhood. The moratorium is probably a step in the right direction. It doesn't, I feel, address our current situation. To kind of give you an example of how fast of what we might be in for. I was reading an article. Someone called me from the pristine Irish Hills, and I didn't know where that was, but now I do. And they said, take a look-see at what happened to our area. And I didn't believe them. They said West Bay came in, said they were going to do 7 to 9 wells. In 2 years, they had 42 wells. You can look that up. I ran out of time. I got 35 permits here and dates. And like 60459, 60441, 60112, 60367, I'll just go on and I'll give them to you. But it was fascinating for me when I did the research. And they're all down the line. And it's just oil, 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 oil. And, you know, if this is what our township, you know, when we invited them in January 15th and December 3rd of 2013, I don't think we would have invited and opened the door that much because I looked at the tapes, you know, and I don't want 42 wells in 2 years, I'm being honest. I don't want 1 well right now, to be honest. I had moved into this residential zoned neighborhood. I spent 4 or 5 years, my husband and I, looking for the perfect spot. We could move anywhere, didn't have kids. Really regretting my decision. Hate to say that. I thought that this was a great neighborhood. It was landlocked. It was wetlands. It was backed up to a metro park, bike path, healthy. It's turned into an industrial zone. Strangely enough, next door, we have 734 homes, not including the condos. It was one man that's infringing on all of our rights. You can go ahead and say there was 60 homes that have been added, but they've been added because of 3 Westland Land Services, which I'd like to see this changed. They will knock on your door 3, 4 times. You can tell them no. They'll come back. No, come back. No. I mean, isn't there an ordinance about solicitation after a while? I mean,
there is in Shelby.
If you're registered. But I mean, it's like, can they keep on coming back 3, 4, 5 times? It's almost to the point where they're harassing you. So there's 60 homes, I think, that Rob has said that signed. There's 674 homes that have not. I like to be on that side of the equation personally. As far as this is the time for our board to step up and take some leadership. And I understand we are all in uncharted territory, but I am begging you to take swift and affirmative corrective action of the situation. Our livelihoods, our homes are on the line here, are the perception of our community as a whole. Why have a zoning? You can let that gentleman go. Maybe he can get a different position because you have a master plan of zoning, which I find ironic with residential and commercial and this. And it takes a long time for your people to figure this out, I think, more than probably 10 minutes. And just like that, you can turn a residentially zoned area into an industrial area. So why spend the time having a master plan? So I beg of you tonight, I implore you, I know this is uncharted territory, but I would hope that you will do something. I don't care what it is, but whether it be going out on that limb for us and putting a wedge to stop what's happening now there, temporarily even. Just let us wrap our minds around this a little bit, because every day that goes on, we're in the well completion phase. That's where we are. This drilling has stopped, but now we're in the well completion phase. And that's when the acid matrix stimulation solution gets added. And that's where we are this week, folks. I've done my research. I know more about oil and gas than I've ever wanted to. And I don't think any of us, and many, many people in here are the same way. And I don't think any of us want to be in this position again. And I hope that you take our comments to heed and do something.
Thank you. And one more thing before you sit down, Mr. Mack, can you just plug that meeting one more time since you're here?
Threw me off.
I'm sorry.
Tomorrow, there's an emergency meeting from a question and answer at 6:30 p.m. at the Grande Palazzo. And like I said, there's going to be Dr. Grobel's there, and from 6:30 to 8, and then there's going to be West Bay there. And I really hope, I know that you cannot be there, Mr. Flynn, you said, but I really hope that all the township Board of Trustees will make this meeting, and the public needs to make this meeting. I mean, you really have to get your voice heard, because when we don't get our voices heard, nothing happens.
Thank you very much. And by the way, thank you for your hard work, too, on this meeting, because I know you've done a lot of legwork, and everybody here I know has pitched in, so thank you. And one other thing, too. Here, yeah, thank you. And Peter Lund, our representative, will not be here, will not be at the meeting tomorrow either. He wanted me to tell you he will be in Lansing. He's working on his bill with Jack Brandenburg. Will not be able to make it back, but I understand Jack Brandenburg will be at the meeting. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, in the back. By the way, did I give everybody here in this corner? Yep. Okay, good. I'm moving to the left.
Gary Galassa, Shelby Township, and you people are going to hate me. This moratorium is essentially, to me, written in Sanskrit. I couldn't tell hide nor hair of what it means, so it doesn't make any difference. I know it's an attempt to stop this from happening. And this gentleman must be a trial attorney, because besides a motion in the room, you could cut his motion with a knife. But I looked up 4746, and there was that minion of Mr. Brandenburg who came to that last meeting and said, come here and talk about the very serious consequences that would result from extraction. And that would be your out to have this happen. But do you not think that 4746 was written to allay the problems of each individual township, city, whatever, when it comes to finding those mineral rights? In 4746, that another gentleman talked about how Brandenburg and Mr. Lund had voted yes on this, but so did 431 other people, and only 26 voted nay, and 12 did not vote at all. So there was a great consensus on passing that law that does this, again, to allay probably the situation that we have here. And to defend Mr. Fitch, that explosion from West Bay, that was a driver that drove into a pipe that blew up that pipe. It was human error, exactly, which can happen on the road. Driving into a tanker. I'm just saying that wasn't as a result. And with the, I was going to have a prepared statement, but, how many more men and women from this country are going to die in a hellhole of a place trying to protect the flow of oil to this country, which uses a great deal of it, and in a place where science and technology produce copious amounts of energy right in our backyard? Why do we insist on stifling the specialness of American ingenuity? Because we don't understand it. Is it just your property values? And when you go to when you see a Blue Angel demo, or if I have a F-18 flies over a football game and your son or daughter says, Mommy, Daddy, what's that noise? You tell them, darling, that's the sound of freedom at the cost of 1,000 gallons of clean Jet A diesel fuel per hour from no matter where you get it. So a great thing to do for these people in that particular area. I do understand that. But based on that vote, I don't think your moratorium is going to have any kind of teeth. And I'm sorry if I offended anyone. But
anyone in this middle section? Anyone else? Yes.
My name's Jay Buckley, and I live at 55738 Parkview Drive. I just moved there in September. I used to live on Greenview in the southeast corner of the township. I lived there for 21 years. I moved there after I got married because I thought Shelby was a great place to raise my kids. And when I moved there, that area is zoned heavy industrial. It's right next to Riverbends Park. It was a great place to raise my kids, but you know what? It kind of sucked because the heavy industrial stuff covered the back of my house with dust and dirt, and I had to hear the noise from sand and gravel mining and everything else. But honestly, it was zoned heavy industrial when I moved there. Okay? So I saved my money for 17 years. And I bought my wife her dream house at 25.5 Mile in DeQuinder last September. And just a few months later, I'm walking down the bike trail with my dog, and bang, 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 boom, bulldozer tracks, backup alarms, 24 hours a day. Right in this pristine, beautiful neighborhood that I moved into. And I'll tell you something right now. We considered moving to all kinds of other communities in the area, to Oakland Township, to Lake Orion, to Clarkston, but we love this area. We love the people who live around here. And I would have never bought that house if I knew that you all were going to allow an oil rig to be planted right smack dab in the middle of it. And don't sit here and act like you're all upset about it now, because we're all upset. But the fact of the matter is you guys have granted leases all over Shelby Township for oil drilling, some of them very close to subdivisions. So none of you guys got upset about it until it was in your backyard and everybody was screaming about it. And here's the real big thing, okay, about it being legal and nothing we can do according to state law. Shelby Township's a great community, and we're living with the legacy of 2 huge EPA Superfund sites, the G&H landfill at 23 in Ryan and the waste incinerator on Ryan Road. And guess what? Those places were approved by what was the Department of Environmental Quality by the state of Michigan at the time. They were approved by the township. They were completely legal, okay? That didn't make them right. And look at the legacy that it's left us with. The whole southeast corner, there's a wasteland. It's a complete and total wasteland. Now I find out that West Bay plans to tear out the bike trail, build a pipeline through the wetlands, okay, to an industrial processing facility at 26 and Mound, right across the street from multi-million-dollar homes. You guys have got to be kidding me. I mean, in all seriousness, this is absolutely absurd. And the last thing I want to say, don't think that this, I agree a little bit with what the last gentleman said. Don't take any of my opposition to this to think that I'm not all for drilling for natural resources and being energy independent in areas where it makes sense. And it doesn't make sense in a residential area anywhere in the township. And the last thing that I have to say to you and everyone on this board, this is the last thing I have to say. I will not rest until this madness is stopped. And there will be demonstrations, there'll be blockages of roads, there'll be civil disobedience to stop this if it's necessary. It's going to stop.
Mr. Huth, you're saying that we are letting West Bay drill on residential property? Tell me exactly. Okay, excuse me, sir. Come on now. We have decorum here, and okay, let's everybody agree to that. And everybody's been well behaved. Let's keep it that way. Okay. Well, explain to me. Have we let these people come in? Is there something we could have done to say no, you can't come in to Shelby Township on residential property?
As the law is written and as we've discussed tonight, our hands have been tied with respect to this well at this site. But my view is that now that we've seen the damage, what we have to live with, that we do have an ability now to regulate what goes on in the future. So that's going to be our position going forward if the board takes action.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
There was another statement that lit my eyes up there. Is there any plans to rip up the bike path and build a pipeline through the wetland?
That's pretty much public knowledge now.
Hold on one second. Mr. Huth, do you know anything about that? I don't know anything about that. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I just don't know. And Mr. Fitch, if you have any information from the MDEQ, you want to come up and address that?
Speak to that, yeah.
Okay. Please let us know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize if anybody felt insulted by my comments. I'm just trying to draw some analogies. You know, we don't live in a risk-free world. Our job is just to balance those risks against the benefits.
Well, what about the bike trails?
We are bound by the law. It's not me acting as an individual. My job is just to enforce the law. So, but at any rate, there's the production facilities can be permitted as part of a well permit, or they can be permitted separately later. In this case, the production facilities were not part of the well permit, but the company, if they are going to put in a production facility, they will have to come back to us for approval. We have not seen plans yet, but we're going to, if we get a proposal for that, We're going to make sure it has a minimal impact on any wetlands. I really don't think they're going to tear up a bike path. That's certainly not something that we would approve. But
if they conform to the law, you can't deny them, can you?
We may not be able to deny it flat out, but we can exercise some options as far as alternatives. And, you know, if they're going to put in a production facility, they will have to have a pipeline between the well and the production facility.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick thing here, and I know there's a lot of emotion in the room, and I'm not trying to get anyone more excited than we already are, but I'm on the Parks and Rec Committee, and we are in charge of that bike path, and we have had so many problems with the MDEQ just to get permits to fix the bike path. So we need some assurance, and if that's what you're saying, then that's helpful, that they're not going to rip up our very expensive, that we are now trying to fix bike path to put a pipeline through. Can you give us that assurance tonight?
I will assure you that we will do everything in our power that are mandated to us to.
I just have.
I don't even have a proposal in front of me.
Okay.
And once we get a proposal, we'll evaluate it. But we certainly take all those things into account.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you.
I just have. Mr. Huth? I have are we asking the right question of the MDEQ when we say send us your applications? Are we asking the right question so we would get an application for a processing facility, or should we be phrasing our request to your department differently?
No, we understand what you're asking for.
Okay, but
we will provide that to you.
All right, thank you.
But how should we ask that question in case you move on somewhere else and we're dealing with someone else at the MDEQ? I want to make sure we're asking the right question. Tell me specifically how we should ask that question so we have applications, approvals, and everything associated with these oil rigs.
You need to ask for plans for production facilities and flow lines.
Okay. Because we're not asking that question right now. But we will now. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and then I'll come down to you. Yes, sir.
Supervisor, Board of Trustees, Jeff Bednar, 55821 Woodridge in Shelby Township. So not the same sub as Mr. Huth, but I do adjoin Nino's property. So, and for those of you that know me, you know I like to ask a lot of questions. I'll try to stay on point as best as I can. So
I will help you.
Thank you so much for that. So this moratorium, and I had an opportunity to actually write things down this time, unlike the last meeting. Just so you understand, Board, I didn't know anything about this until 2 weeks ago, and I feel kind of shocked about that. That as an adjacent property owner, I would have received zero notification. Whether there was some kind of public notice that was published in a newspaper, everybody's got to recognize that nobody really sees those, right? So I appreciate the efforts that the township is now trying to make for future, that residents will get to know what's going on. And as far as comments that were made earlier about, well, it's difficult for us to notify everybody what's going on from the DEQ oil and gas, is that what their section's called? Whatever it's called. The other permits that are issued through MDEQ have no problem requiring adjacent property notification. So I do not understand why that one wouldn't have that same requirement. Okay, also, I think this pertains to this motion. You know, the regulations currently treat townships and county regulations differently than they do other municipalities. So what would it take for us to become a city, if that would be the correct route to go? I don't know that I mean, that involves a whole lot of other worms that we'd be opening a can of, but maybe we should be at least considering that. Why? Okay, so, you know, when we talk about that the state will review options if they know that we wouldn't want to tear up a bike path, let's say. So they'll consider other options. Why did they consider that it was an option to move the well closer to property owners who have no investment actually in the exploration of oil and gas? From where they first had the permit issued, they moved it closer. What was it for? It was to benefit one property owner, and they pushed that setback requirement right up against Mr. Huth's house. I mean, why is that okay? And I know we can't really address that with a moratorium, but I just wanted to sneak that in anyway. I think that's not fair. I think we've talked a little bit about what the proposed moratorium would do today, and I'm really not satisfied with that. I would like to see you consider including the completion activities in that moratorium, as well as permits for things other than drilling, like the oil processing facility. So it sounds like we also do not get to regulate the construction of the pipeline. So if that's the case, should we be considering all of those activities as well? Back to horizontal drilling for a second, and just in case people weren't clear on how this happened, because I know everybody didn't have an opportunity to go to the meeting that occurred last week. But when the permit was issued, they have like an area that they can mine, and I'm a pseudo expert because I've been studying this for 2 weeks now, I guess. But they have a 40-acre parcel that they're allowed to mine, but they don't actually have to build a well in that 40 acres. And so what they did was not build it in the 40 acres, push it as far off onto near adjacent property owners as possible, so that Nino Homes, I presume, would be looking at maximizing the number of lots that he could build on his own property to the detriment of adjacent property owners. In the same sense, if West Bay or another oil exploration company were to, say, go into Washington Township and build a horizontal drill from there and come into Shelby Township, would the moratorium act on those drilling operations or not? So I have a question about that, because I think that's probably what's going to happen. This is, I know there's a lot of hearsay going on, but since unfortunately the exploration company is not really telling us what their overall plans are for the township or for their operations, and they may not want to give their hands because they're a private enterprise that doesn't want to tell other private enterprises how they're going to do business, right? That's fair. But it seems like what's going to happen is they complete this well. Now they can take oil out of there. They're going to build a pipeline. That pipeline, whether they disturb the path or whether they're able to just directionally drill through there, I'm not really sure how that activity would occur. I know there's 2 other pipelines in there already, some pretty major gas lines. And I don't know the regulations between how close you can situate an oil pipeline to a gas pipeline. That's not my expertise. But I would have questions about it, certainly. So they're going to likely construct this. They're going to look for a property that's probably zoned LM, is what I'm guessing, based upon looking at some zoning maps and who owns property that's zoned LM near 26 and Mound. And that's probably where they're headed. Well, so they can construct that. We don't have anything in the moratorium that prevents that. They can site a well maybe at HCMA property and then come down and horizontal drill underneath Copperfield. I think that's the sub where people have been approached recently by them to give up oil and gas mineral rights. So a 6-month moratorium I don't think does anything to really suspend their operations. So another question I would have is, so what do we expect to happen after 6 months? I certainly need more time as a resident to be able to consider what my options are. And I look at it from a community standpoint, but also from a my backyard standpoint. And I know everybody hates to say it's not in my backyard, but this one is in my backyard right now. And I don't have the time to really fully vet what's going on with that. And without a moratorium in place, I don't think there's any chance for that. I think last point on this is the resolution that you guys had posted, and I know you're not entertaining it right now, but within there, you made a couple comments that were proposed, where you were saying that the township and its residents have experienced significant hardship and damages. And then also saying that any future permits, and I would maybe dispute the word future, but really any future activity on existing permits as well, within residential zones in the Charter Township of Shelby is likely to cause irreparable damage to the environment, property, and investments within the Charter Township of Shelby. Now, if this is truly the case, and you truly believe that, then I believe we need some sort of moratorium with more teeth. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Mr. Huth?
Lots of questions. Mr. Bednar, I hope I accurately kept track. The first is, why don't we just become a city? It's a possibility. It's a complicated proposal because what happens is a township, as we've been pressured since 2007, 8, 9, with the economic conditions we're in, this board has been pressured to make joint agreements with other communities, townships and such, to handle our public services as such. So those all of those arrangements and cost-cutting saves that have been made would have to be looked at to see if how we go forward as a city. So I think that would be one of the challenges, and there'd be others in terms of political structure and stuff. But can't be completely ruled out, but I would say complicated, and it would not likely solve our issue as quickly as this issue is coming to us. What about, I thought the example that you put forward is, what about drilling in Washington Township that maybe follows this pattern down 30-degree angle, back down. So drilling in Washington Township that affects Shelby Township. In that scenario, I think the key is affecting. If we didn't know what was going on, it would be hard for us to regulate something Washington Township has going on in their community. But if we're suffering consequences of it, I think our moratorium would come into play. What do we expect in 6 months was your next question. We need, in the next 6 months, one of two things to happen. We need to have the state solve this problem, but this board does not want to rely on that hope. We hope that'd be great if it happened, but if it doesn't, we need 6 months to shore up some of the ammunition that we have against this type of activity in the future. And we're going to do that. A meeting, if the board allows, Thursday morning to start working on some ordinances that no other communities are going to have to help us with this. But one of the things I think I may have done a poor job of explaining tonight was there's been questions of, well, the moratorium's not going to help processing. True, I didn't want to mislead you and say it was a cure-all, but we have other tools in our, at our disposal to help processing. We're not giving up any of those tools because we're passing this moratorium. We're not saying this is all we have. If there's activity at that site that is loud and obtrusive to us, we still have the right as a community to bring a nuisance claim. That nuisance was brought to us. We didn't move next to it. It wasn't there when all of us purchased our homes. We're not giving up that right. We're not giving up the rights that we have to monitor activity that occurs in an industrial zone. So I don't want to, I think this moratorium is, as Mr. Mack said, a step in the right direction, but we're not passing it and throwing all our other tools. We still have those. So I'd expect that we'd still use those in the next 6 months on this. I think that's the key ones I have. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm going to go to the floor first, and then we'll come up to the board. Any other questions? Yes. Yep. I'm sorry, I forgot you.
Jerome Paul Van Ness Jr., Shelby resident. One way to put teeth in anything we do is to follow up on what's been done already. My understanding is the developer has already committed or done environmental harm. For instance, strip cutting those trees. Now, I don't know if anything's been done to him. Okay. Is it possible to move on him through the courts to prosecute him or anything like that? If it is, let's move on him so that he'll take it as seriously in anything he does in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. What about the courts for that issue? And what is that issue, clear-cutting trees?
Well, Mr. Zajo, I mentioned that there had been clear-cutting trees there. Absolutely. I know that this board would support a lawsuit if there's been those types of issues occurring at that property. Before tonight, I wasn't aware of it, so I will follow up. I don't see Mr. Jerry. I will absolutely follow up. If there's issues at that site, the township will bring a suit, as it has within the last 3 or 4 months, against other developers that have clear-cut trees. Somebody cut down 150, it's $500 a tree. So that's our rule here in the township. We would aggressively pursue it.
Okay.
Christine Suey, Coventry Place Subdivision, Shelby Township. I don't live in Creekside Village, but my friends do. I echo most of the previous speakers' concerns, so I don't need to repeat them. I do understand the thought process of residents living near industrial zoned areas as much as I want to halt drilling altogether in townships and cities with 70,000 plus or more. To Mr. Huth, I do applaud your effort to work nonstop on this drilling issue, and I want to apologize for my personal anger and frustration toward you. My question is, does this moratorium include drilling in Stony Creek Metro Park or Riverbends Park located within township boundaries? And are you now speaking with other townships and cities, or are they contacting you because of the media blitz that's going on regarding future oil drilling in their areas? And my final comment is this moratorium with teeth, without teeth, would be a balance between residential and industrial to start.
Well, Mrs. Sui, I apologize as well. We had quite a spirited conversation today, but I'm glad we're all moving forward.
And this is about moving forward, by the way.
Please don't throw my wife out of the bunco group. The first question is, would this moratorium stop drilling in Stony Creek or other parks? In other parks, yes. Most of Stony Creek, though, is in Washington Township. The interest is in Shelby, so it would only affect those portions of the park that's in Shelby Township. So yes to that. Have we been in contact with other communities? We have spoken to a number of attorneys, and that's how we came across, actually, through your help and other sources. Mr. Olson, who I'm going to ask the board to retain, I believe he is also on WWJ or WJR tomorrow morning speaking to this issue in a way us communities need to really get together and change the law. That we're a powerful voice, but much more powerful when all of the communities are together. So yes, we are in communication with others.
We are in communication with other cities. In fact, I made a presentation to some 15 cities and other townships surrounding Shelby Township, and they agree that oil and gas drilling and exploration should never have occurred and should not occur in residential areas. They also agree that this is a threat for them as well. At the time, I didn't have a moratorium to present to them, but what we did have was a resolution. That's all we had at the time. So they're all looking at this. I know in Sterling Heights, they were, looking at some prerequisites that actually had been done, and they're questioning now if something could be taking place a lot more serious. Hopefully not as serious as Shelby Township, but we're all looking. And, I asked for their support. And I told them that I'm extremely grateful for our neighbors here in Shelby Township who have stood up and demanded change in the law, but we need more help than the people here. We need them to stand up, and we need them to talk to their representatives as well, and they committed that they would do that. Again, this is not just a threat against Shelby Township. This is a threat against everyone's backyards in all cities, in all townships here in Michigan. So, yes, I have been in touch with them. And, in fact, today I even talked to one of our neighbors just over the phone. So, yes, ma'am. You've been very patient.
Mary Bednar, 55821 Woodridge. Just a couple follow-ups. My fourth question, I only have 4 questions, you actually answered as far as talking to other communities, asking them to put moratoriums or at least resolutions supporting this. That's very important. These other communities need to support us. It's not just here. It's not just in our backyard right now. It is currently, but it's going further. We need that support, so thank you for doing that.
I did leave out one other thing, if I could just excuse me one moment. Our county executive was at that meeting, too. He couldn't stay for my presentation, but he did come up to me and say that he will absolutely, do whatever he can as well. So I should note that as well. Go ahead.
Thank
I'm sorry.
you. Thank you very much. Mr. Huth, you'd mentioned that we do have some regulations and nuisance rights above ground. I personally have not witnessed a tree being removed today, but I heard in the crowd that there were. Please follow through on those. There has been issues that have been nuisance. You woke up on a Saturday morning. There was issues at midnight. I know we have sound and noise ordinances. We need to follow through on these nuisance ordinances, and we need to start now. Not last week we should have been doing this. Why have we waited? I don't know. I know there's, but we need to address those now. Second thing is the solicitation. There are people currently, in the last couple days, been solicited in Creekside, that neighborhood. Do they have a permit to be solicited? I mean, I know there's an ordinance there. Do they have a right to be going through these neighborhoods and soliciting these people? We need to look at that, because if they don't, another ordinance that's not being followed that we need to follow through on, because we have ordinances in place that they're just disobeying. They don't care. So we need to look at all those ordinances. And then the third thing is, or fourth, is your weekly question to the DEQ about permits, applications. Can you please include adjacent neighboring communities, so that if they do go for one in Washington Township and want to come horizontal into us, or into Rochester, or into Utica coming down, wherever, we know which adjacents and where they're coming from, so that we're ready, so that it's not a, oh, whoops, now they're in our city or our township limits. We need to know that. If you could add that to that list as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to comment on our ordinances. We rely on all of you folks. We're very much in a reactionary mode when it comes to enforcing ordinances. What we don't do is we don't ride down the streets looking for ordinance violations. But we get a lot of calls. We do not ask for names, and that's what we rely on. And when we get those calls, we act on them. So you are our eyes and ears, and when we get some ordinance violations, we're out taking care of it. So continue, please, the good work that you do. And we have 2 people in that department, 1 full-time that does nothing but that, and, of course, the building director who supervises that enforcement officer. So we're doing everything we can.
There's a comment by Mrs. Bednar about solicitation. I just want to mention the township has a list in the clerk's office that you can put your name on, so that you are excluded as a house that a solicitor can come to. So if you haven't done that yet, please give that some thought. And then another question that you had, Mrs. Bednar, well, first you had a good suggestion. Adjacent communities is a good suggestion. We should do that. But you asked, do these people have a right to solicit? They do if they get a permit and they go to a house that is not on the list. So my follow-up is to make sure they have a permit. But if they do, then the ball's a little bit in the residence court to keep them off by registering with our clerk. I urge you to consider that.
I just want to say we've got a number of items on our agenda tonight. Of course, anyone who wants to come up, we will let you come up. But if there's like new ideas or something, we want to hear them. But if you think that we've covered everything, it would be okay if we moved on. But again, I'm not saying you can't come up. Let's just try to keep it going here as much as we can. In the back there, yes. Mm-hmm.
Valentina, 5705 Francesca Lane. From what I understood tonight is 26 and Mound is considered an industrial site, industrial area. I wouldn't consider it as such. There's a Metro Park very close by. There are a lot of families, a lot of wildlife, bike path. Can you do something to rezone that so we cannot expect a processing plant being put up there? And the second question is, has Shelby Township signed any additional leases with West Bay for oil drilling, and if so, where?
Mr. Huth, can we rezone?
Well, it's, as this board well knows, it's fraught with a lot of issues because courts interpret it as a unnecessary improper constitutional taking if somebody buys property zoned industrial and then afterwards we change the zoning of it. So it'd be very difficult, and I don't know that it's realistic. I know we want to give answers to give people hope that this problem's going to be solved, but I don't think that would, I'll think about it, but I don't think that would be our best weapon here.
Any other leases with West Bay?
No.
Okay. What about the 2 last year in December?
No, those are the only 2.
Okay. Okay. And one, of course, would be at Fire Station number 1?
Yeah, no, those are the 2, sir. Yeah, those are the 2. Yes.
Well, hold on, everybody.
No, that's why he said he asked if there's any other. There was 2 leases signed, no others, right?
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
My name's Douglas Gregg. I'm a resident of Shelby Township. Can I ask a question? Why do you all keep changing the subject when we ask about the other oil leases with West Bay? You've known these people for years. You're doing business with them. You should have some influence over them. That's my question.
I don't think we're changing the subject, but I have not been doing business with them for years. I didn't know anything about them until December when they came into our boardroom. What was the other question, Mr. Huth?
Correct, sir.
We did sign 2 leases, and that was in December, but the question was, why are we changing the subject? And I didn't know I was, or I didn't know we were. And the other question was, we've been doing business with them for years. No, we have not been. Again, I did not know them until they came to this boardroom. I believe it was in November or December of this year. Did I answer all the questions?
They say that they've been drilling wells in Shelby.
And they have been drilling for how many years? Excuse me, everybody. Come on, one at a time. We're going to get to everybody. Have they? Excuse me, sir. Sir, you have been violating our decorum. You're speaking out of turn. Everybody here is coming up, speaking one at a time, but you are still choosing to holler out questions. You've already been up here, so I will not tolerate any more of that behavior. I'm sorry. That's your final warning. As far as West Bay is concerned, Mr. Huth, what else has this township done with West Bay? Do you know? Because
I'm unaware of it, but I will say Mr. Randazzo, township resident, probably out here, I can't see right now, but has brought me an example, I think, of a lease he signed in the late 1980s, and I haven't looked at it yet. It may be with West Bay, but I think what's happened is West Bay did do leases, had wells at 25 Mile Road, 22 Mile Road, and maybe a third. All of those kind of ran their course, one of them for 28 years. So the answer is they had been in our community, but this board and really no recent boards had any contact with them because they had no issues until they came to here in December of 2012 and asked for something.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, sir. Yes, in the back. Yep.
Almost back.
My name is Mike Kaiser, and I live in Shelby Township. A couple of questions. One is, and maybe I misunderstood, but is there any way to prevent this well and get it shut down? I don't know if anybody's asked that question. 2, if they can't, can we make it very, very difficult so that every turn they take is an obstacle? So that maybe they just get so frustrated they go away. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Huth, can we shut it down? And what else can we do to make it more frustrating for them so they can get out of town?
Well, we have no intention of creating things to unnecessarily harass anyone. Instead, we are going to enact and enforce ordinances that are proper tools. So I'm not asking the board to unfairly take action against West Bay. This moratorium will not shut down the well, and we shouldn't mislead people to think that it will. But going forward, if West Bay has conduct there that is inconsistent with what we've enacted and have regarding processing, transportation of these minerals, we will respond accordingly, but we will respond fairly with respect to the laws we have at our disposal.
Mr. Fitch from the MDEQ, I know I've asked you this question before, but maybe you could tell the folks, is there a way we can shut this well down right now if we want to? And if so, how?
Well, I'm not the attorney, but there are certain legal rights that any entity has, and you can't take those away without compensating for them. If you really want to shut it down, the only answer really is to purchase that well and the rights to it. I mean, that is really, if you want to control development, that is the key. Is with the leasing. And once somebody leases their oil and gas rights, they've got a right to a legal right under the Constitution to benefit from them. And if you try to deny that outright, then you are faced with a takings case. And that's what happened with us back in 1987 with a $90 million judgment. So that's the only reason I brought that up. That's the risk that you incur if you try to just flat out deny things.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, when I was asking how can we get him out of town, I was not insinuating that we should be harassing. I was just repeating a question, just so everybody knows. Anywhere else? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Stathakis, and good evening, Board. My name is Jim Madison, and unfortunately, I happen to be the president of the Homeowner Association involved in this from Creekside Village. I heard earlier mention several things, one of which about clear cutting, and I'm also, amongst other things, throughout this whole nightmare, I'm the media person for our area, and I was out to the site today with WDIT TV, and if you want to see clear cutting, I can get you the tape. And also, if they're finished with their drilling, why are we clear cutting trees today? This happened today, and there was a huge 2 trucks, semis, hauling lumber out of there today. So if we can go ahead and act on that, and any other things that the developer may have, I think there's certain things that the community and the board is responsible for preparing of a site. Even if we can't control the well, we can control things around it. Maybe we need to take a long look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Laura Krempa, Creekside Village. I drove back to the site today when I heard the cutting, and I spoke to the tree cutting service, and I just, not that they told me the truth, but I asked them, are you cutting this down for West Bay? Or are you cutting it down for Nino? And they said that they were cutting the trees down in lot 21 for Nino Homes, because apparently...
Excuse me, in lot 21?
21, yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much. Okay, everybody here? Yes, yes, sir.
I'm Richard Kugel. I live in Coventry Place. I had a couple comments and recommendations, maybe. One is I'd like to see this current well stopped, all activity on it stopped immediately, and I don't care what it takes. I'm sure it can be done, or you can find a way. If we can't find a way, we just got to go higher. Second, I'd like a full audit of the DEQ. I'd like you to request it from the state, from the governor, to do a full audit of the DEQ, how they do applications, and if they're following their own rules. I want it done by an outside audit firm. Third, I think you should stop doing business or allowing West Bay to do business in this city immediately, whatever it takes. The same thing with the Lachero homes. Okay?
As far as stopping this, you were saying we should go to a higher level. I have written a letter to the governor. He did respond today. We will be having a meeting, not with him directly, but with one of his aides. It's probably the best he can do, but we will fill you in on those details. And, of course, if you have some questions for the governor, hopefully all of you, or at least some of you, will have that option. As far as a final audit is concerned, I guess that would be a question for the governor, too. But I do agree with you that we have to do everything we can do to stop this, and that's exactly why we're here tonight, and that's what we're trying to do with this agenda item. Mr. Glenn Wynn, thank you for coming up. Well, I have a question for you because we've been hearing some reports of clear cutting, specifically Lot 21 for Nino Homes. I've heard a report here from some of the folks that there has been some cutting down of trees.
Well, there have been some permits issued for several lots in that development, and they're only allowed to remove trees when they get a building permit.
Okay.
But not any more tree removal other than that.
Do you know of any other tree cutting going on in this township that is, if there was some illegal tree cutting going on, what do they have to pay?
Well, we've had one instance where there was some clear cutting. We worked with Mr. Huth's office, and we filed suit against the applicant as sort of a follow-up. But in this particular case, we don't issue permits, or they can't remove trees on an individual building site until they're ready to build on that lot.
Okay. So if any of you have any questions or reports, because we rely on you, specifically like Lot 21, please talk to Mr. Glenn Wynn, our planning director, and he will be sitting in the back. If you could, give him your reports right now, it would be very helpful, because we're very serious about our trees here in Shelby Township, of course. Thank you, Mr. Wynn. Anyone else in this section? Yes, in the back. No, I'll come to you. Yes. And thank you, everybody, for being patient. I'm just trying to go right to left here. So.
Good evening, Hope Lucas, and I live at 52795 Blue Ridge Drive. My question is this. Does Shelby Township have a lease with West Bay to drill in Riverbends Park and also behind Fire Station number 1 on 23 Mile? And if you do, would that be a conflict of interest?
Okay. Mr. Huth?
I am unaware of any drilling activities planned for Riverbends Park. I have heard that a couple times by the email. So the first question is, the township has no lease with respect to Riverbends Park. The second question is, does the township have a lease with respect to minerals underneath Fire Station number 1, right, on 23?
Or oil.
The answer to that question is yes. But the follow-up to it is, does the township have a conflict? And the answer is unequivocally no. Parties all the time make contracts with each other and fall out of favor with each other and sue pursuant to those contracts. The township will enforce its ordinances, even if that means the realization of that lease will never come to the township. I'm sure they'll be satisfied with that. So there is no conflict. The township is not going to give beneficial treatment to West Bay because of that lease at Fire Station number 1.
Maybe you've answered this question, but just to make it real clear, can we void nullify that lease that we have signed up with in Fire Station 1 if we so desire?
Well, toughest thing about being a municipal lawyer is you give your answers to the whole world to see.
Well, never mind that. No, never mind.
I have looked at the lease, and if I don't have to answer it, I'll pass.
Yeah, you know what? I'd rather he pass. I don't want to get into any legal jargon right now, but it's something that we will look at. I want everybody to know we will definitely look at that. Okay, sir, you've been very patient. Yes. And yeah. Everybody's been very patient. And by the way, I want to thank everybody here for just coming up one at a time and just expressing your ideas and giving us your input. This is extremely helpful. It's what we need to hear, and just thanks for being a great audience. Yes, sir.
Steve Lindsay, 4045 Clear Spring Court, Shelby Township. I would like to welcome this group to our smart meter group team. I wonder where this group has been on smart meters.
Okay, but we're talking about drilling
and we're talking about drilling tonight, and I'd like this group to know that there is something called Welcome to Let's Ban Fracking. And it's www.letsbanfracking.org. It's the Committee to Ban Fracking in the state of Michigan. Now, if they do not know about that, I would sure like to get with them and join up with Let's Ban Fracking. Now, I'd like the people to know, or if they don't know, what are they putting in the ground to get this oil or gas to come out of the rocks in the soil that they're trying to get it out of? I've been doing some research on fracking, and those chemicals going in the ground are some unbelievable, terrible stuff. And I believe that this is part of a bigger picture, Mr. Supervisor. Fracking is just not by itself. It's part of other things and could be and should be looked into as being part of Agenda 21. So that is my statement tonight, and I would like to join up with the team leader, whoever the team leader is, or the team leader of the fracking, and bring them together with our smart meter group, and maybe we could really do some good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here?
Mr. Chairman, would you please comment on fracking?
Well, yes, we did put in the leasing proposal that there absolutely will be no fracking, and that was part of the lease.
Not allowed, is it?
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'll let you.
You know what? I shouldn't have talked over you. I was trying to communicate.
I'll let you go ahead and respond about the fracking.
I think I'd rather an expert if we could, and whether there's fracking occurring at this site.
Is there a fracking occurring at this site? And before you answer the question, I know it is in our lease with West Bay that there absolutely is no fracking allowed. But go ahead.
No, there is no fracking at the Nino Homes 1-6 well. It's very unlikely there would be any really in Macomb County. The geology here just doesn't lend itself to it.
Okay.
I mean, that's a debate. I'd be glad to have that debate on another day, but not tonight.
Okay, thank you.
I think the question was, is there different chemicals going in the ground or being used?
Well, right now, that would be part of the well completion. I think there's a completion rig moving in right now. That might entail some use of chemicals, but what there would be...
Well, it's not only chemicals. It's what else are they putting in the ground other than chemicals, too?
Well, everything's a chemical, but I mean, it would be a mixture of water and hydrochloric acid. It's the same thing like muriatic acid that you clean your swimming pool with. What that does is etch that limestone formation. So that's the kind of fluids they would be using if they do go ahead and complete that well that way.
Okay. So. Thank you. Okay, anyone else here? Yes, and then I'll get to you. I know some of you are putting your hands up more than once. I'm sorry, once you're up, I just can't call on you again. I wish I could, and especially because of time, we really need to get to the other 13 agenda items.
Bob Zenner, I also live in Creekside of Shelby. It seems like there's really no good way to shut the well down. They have obligations for mineral rights, legal rights to do so. The moratorium we're trying to pass is going to stop future wells and future ways to just regulate it. Anthony mentioned just not a ton of teeth in what we're trying to do. If we can't shut the well down and we're looking to stop future developments, it seems like the best way to shut the well down is to go after their pipeline and or their production facility. If they don't have a pipeline and they don't have a production facility, that in turn is going to shut that well down. So maybe we need to think proactively about getting ahead of it.
I think the regulations with respect, it's an excellent point. We should absolutely monitor what's going to go on with processing. I don't disagree with that.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, you've been patient, sir. Come on up. Yeah. Okay, no one else? I'll move over here. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Clarence Cook, SomeResident.com. Just a few things. I know this moratorium suggests is going to be a great thing, but there's people out here that have great input. And I'm sure Mr. Huth is going to put these things together with their input to come up with the right moratorium. I know that West Bloomfield just got done signing a 6-month, I believe, moratorium on fracking and drilling, which was great. So other communities are doing it. And as one gentleman said, I think, I could be wrong, but I thought this was signed by our legislators in 2011. One thing, it might be revenue for the state, but look what it's upset. It's great for them, but look what this does. You have to think about these things before you start doing them, what the counterpart of this is. And you can see tonight and tomorrow what it is. So you, as our political people that are looking forward to these things, you got to look what the consequence is. When we were here at the last meeting a week or two ago, one lady mentioned to the gentleman that was here, you work in 5 counties. You've been doing this for 25 years. Is this the first residential drilling that you've done? He hesitated for 10 seconds, and I knew what the answer was. Yes, this is the first one, and it should be the last. It should be the last. Okay. Another question, too. I know in this process here, in the neighborhood, there's no revenue as far as to Shelby Township. We do have wells that are there now being pumped. I know you receive revenues on that. Should it be the situation of thinking maybe not putting any type of wells or anything in the future so that the residents can see you're really concerned. You're not going to do this anymore, even if it's revenue. And what amount of revenue is worth what these people are going through? So maybe you should consider that, if you can, in the future, and even for what we're doing now. And it's definite point. And like I said, these people are here, definite great concerns. And I know I took a lot of notes in regards to that at that last meeting. And we know that the permits are done by the state, not by you. You have no control about that. So I thank you, and I thank the people for standing up for what they believe in. And you listening, but listen, really listen in the future, not only on this, but other subjects that are brought up by the residents. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lee?
Well, the township has discussed a number of times. There's 2 leases that were signed, but those were not having to do with any wells that are already in place. So, no, I don't agree that the townships received revenue. There was a discussion at the meeting there was 2 December meetings. I think the December 12 meeting was discussed that the revenues were paid to Utica Community School regarding a site that was near Eisenhower High School, but that had nothing to do with the township. So township has not received any revenues.
Okay, and also he asked about a moratorium in West Bloomfield. How is that one different than the one that we're actually, well, tell us a little bit about that one, and then how does that compare with ours?
Well, the West Bloomfield moratorium does use a broader definition than we have used in terms of the activities that are prohibited. So that's one difference. The West Bloomfield moratorium was passed prior to the community having experience as to what happens when a well goes in. So their moratorium doesn't talk about the issues that have occurred and the constitutional powers to protect those from occurring again, because they didn't have the experience that we've lived through here. So those are 2 of the big differences between what we've done and what West Bloomfield's done. But it's like us. It's not a city. It's a township. So it's wrestling with the state law and trying to figure a way to combat these consequences. And yes, we have spoken with the attorney, and yes, we're on the same page as to trying to get to the same end result.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll go to this side of the room and we'll finish up here. Yes, sir. I'll go from front to back.
Craig Roman, 2268 Nickleby, Shelby. And I'm not really all that thrilled about coming up here and talking. I'm not prepared or anything, but I just wanted to say one of Brandenburg's representatives before at one of the past meetings made it sound like you could possibly block something through serious consequence law or some literature written at the end of that law, and it still seems like that's grounds to where we could try and do something with that. I mean, it seems like there's an argument to be had there. I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like lawyers find ways to argue just about anything. And it seems like a good loophole right there to work on. And regarding risk and everything, I understand there is risk everywhere, but I lived an hour and a half away from here, moved to this area because I thought I was minimizing my risk and where I'm going to live and where I'm going to stay. And that's why I picked here. And I could have lived somewhere a lot more risky and a lot less cost to buy and keep my value in my home, you know, and not give it up. So that's about all
Thanks
I got
for coming
to say.
up.
Yep.
Ms. Ruth, what about Brandenburg's idea? Why can't we just shut this thing down?
Well, there was somebody that did speak at our town. Am I beeping? There is somebody that did from another office come and tell us that serious consequences would allow us to enact a ordinance to prohibit this type of activity. They're referring to Section 5 of MCL 125.3205. Unfortunately, that provision has been clearly defined by the courts and by the legislature. It does not apply to zoning, to drilling. It does not apply to drilling. It applies to mining. We don't have a mining activity here. The philosophy is regulation to mining is different than regulation for drilling. Drilling, you're going down and grabbing a pool that may be flowing into your spot. Mining is you get it when it's right there. So the regulations are different for these two things. The statute that you were read does not apply. The statute that many of you people were left a voicemail message about does not apply. It will not help us, and I'm certain of it, and I'd be glad to talk to anybody in more detail about it.
Anyone else on this side? Yes.
I'm Rebecca Sawicki. I live in Stonewick, which is a community that is actually closer to where the rumored production processing facility would be, near the 26th and Mound area. But Creekside Village and Copperfield, they're all adjacent to my sub, and these are my neighbors and my friends that live there. I don't want to leave anything out, so I wrote this out, but I know the issue at hand right now is the moratorium, and we need to come back to that if anything's going to progress with this meeting. And I do understand the philosophy behind passing a moratorium that may be more readily defended, so that energy can be spent on making positive changes that we have a better chance of successfully enacting. That being said, let's say you pass a moratorium as written now to help prevent future activity. Are you saying there is no remedy or recourse for the people who are currently affected? How is the personal property rights of an individual landowner that Mr. Fitch keeps talking about, how are those rights superlative to hundreds of residents' rights to enjoy their property, avoid risks to their health and safety, protect and or appreciate their property values in a market that is already struggling to recover? To be clear, are we to understand that short of making sure that all existing ordinances are complied with, that this board will be taking no further action to provide any remedy in regards to the current well? I keep hearing you say, I don't think we can do anything. But it seems to me that you cannot know that we can't do anything until someone at least tries. This is the first situation where MDEQ and West Bay have drilled this close to a residential area since the current law passed in 2011. They are testing the boundaries of this law, and obviously they are confident enough that they're pushing it to the very limit of what is allowed. Was it 457 feet from your bedroom window? You as a board have an obligation to the constituency which elected you to also push the limits and defend us. Be bold. Stop saying, I don't think we can do anything about the current situation. Nothing is easy the first time. We are setting the precedent for other communities in our state. Wouldn't you rather be the board? Wouldn't you rather be the guys who figured out how to slay the giant? I don't want this moratorium to pass and then the initial well just be written off as collateral damage. I don't feel comfortable sharing the individual's name because they asked not to have their name shared, but I will tell you that the vice president of West Bay has had conversations with certain individuals in our community. I guess this would be hearsay, but it's hearsay from someone that I trust, that is absolutely honest and very a source full of integrity, that they do intend to utilize the utility and pipeline easement along the bike trail, and that their intended location for the processing facility is 26 and Mound. And they actually also hold lease rights to property behind the new condominiums that are going in at 26 and Shelby, and they hope to put in another well at 26 and Shelby in the future. They will not stop. If we don't grow some grown-up teeth, for lack of, everybody knows what we need to grow. And we need to grow them, and they need to be big, and they need to be strong, and they need to have merit. And I absolutely agree with Mr. Randazzo that we have to at least come at this with everything that we have. If you can say to us, yes, I think this moratorium will be more readily defended, and it will allow us to concentrate all of our efforts and all of our energy into making sure, A, this doesn't happen to anybody else, and Actually, not even A, this doesn't happen to anyone else. A, we're going to fix what happened to you. We don't know how we're going to do it yet, but there has to be a way. There's always a way. Somebody has to be first. Are we going to be the first community that allows them to run us down? Or are we going to say, this isn't going to happen, not here or anywhere else?
Okay, thank you very much.
I agree with Mrs. Sawicki. They have moved from the drilling to the next phase. The township, regardless of whether or not it passes this moratorium tonight, still has the tools necessary to battle on behalf of, as you described it, the individual property owners versus the oil company. I'm not saying pass this and then we're going to call it a day. I'm saying pass this, this will help us, but we still have the tools. If it ends up that the well operation there is a nuisance, violates our ordinances, we still have those tools. So this is not an exclusive tool, it's just another one. And if they're going over there at 26 Mile in Shelby, I did not know that, that is good new information. I think we're much better positioned if we have a moratorium in place to say we need an opportunity to take a look at what's going on with these activities. So I say we be aggressive with respect to this operation in my backyard and all of ours, but I do think we still should put this tool in our belt too. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 more. Sir, you want to go first? Okay, and then I'll go 2, 3, 4. Thanks.
Mark Pickering, 56004 Ashbrook Drive West. I would like to know how many gallons of hydrochloric acid are we pumping in the ground an hour, a day, from Mr. Fitch? Yep. And why are we allowing this to happen? Number 2, are all of our roads zoned for hazardous chemicals that it takes to support this drilling? That's all.
Thank you. I'm so sorry I can't respond to our roads being zoned for these chemicals, but I will get back to you on that. But Mr. Fitch, would you like to come up and talk about the number of gallons of hydrochloric acid that is being used on this drill?
Well, I'm speculating. Some of these wells don't require any acid treatment at all. Just some of them do. So I really can't say at this point. But I think the critical thing here is that acid solution is being injected not into a freshwater zone, not into your drinking water supply. It's far, far below the surface, 5,000 feet down, in a zone that already has brine in it and hydrocarbons. And then whatever that fluid is recovered, it has to be disposed of in a deep disposal well where it's also isolated from the environment. So we're protecting the environment regardless of what the chemicals are. We're protective of the environment in the way they're managed.
Okay. Thank you.
I really can't speak for the company. You know, we don't set limits on how many gallons.
You could address the board, please, sir. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We don't set a limit on how many gallons they can use, but again, it's just a matter of managing it properly. So.
Okay. Chief, did you want to come up and give a few comments on that? Fire Chief Jim Swinkowski.
Yeah, thank you. I did have had several conversations with their safety director because obviously, like everyone else, I'm playing catch up. I was at the site the other day. There were no hazardous chemicals on site. I did ask them about that. They said this is a non-fracking well, and I asked them, what are you injecting to get the oil out? They said based on how porous the bedrock is, they would not need to do that here. They simply just extract it. And obviously, I was told that the finishing machines would start tomorrow. We already had planned on being there tomorrow to check out the site, but just so everyone knows that they assured me, and actually as of 4 o'clock today, that they would not be using water or anything injecting to get the oil out.
Okay. 3 more here. Yes.
I'm Andrew Jarris III, 0706-176-022 is my property. I'm very glad that you presented the moratorium. Very glad. Because yesterday, I thought I'd be against all of you today. This meeting, this video I watched, you introduced the wolves into the hen houses. The land brokers representing Mr. Gibson. You let these people into our community and you said, go ahead. They unfolded a map for you. It was a banter. It was a joyous banter between the board and these two gentlemen. The only person, Mr. Huth read the presentation. The only person who said this wasn't a good idea was Mr. Grott. At the end of the year, Mr. Gibson came here, and again, you were talking about fracking, and he was telling you about fracturing. You guys were writing a proposal to go through. You're not an expert at what they do. They are big oil. They know how to do it. These guys know how to get leases, and right now, they're still running around out there. If you want them out of the community, which right now, you've got two separate issues. Thank goodness that we didn't have oil wells going on the land that you agreed to in the second meeting, these 3 locations that you thought are good locations. Actually, it's probably a good thing that happened in Mr. Huth's backyard, in my backyard, because now we know what a nuisance it can be. There has to be, if we want them here, you broker deals, and Mr. Huth, I hope you wrote a great one to get out of. Because if not, you're in for a humongous lawsuit, and I don't want to be involved in it. And that's why I'm glad you did this right now. Because you're protecting us, okay? And we're very happy you are protecting us. But I don't want to let you off the hook. I can't let you off the hook because this was miscited. There were things that they agreed with you. You had an arrangement of some sorts. They fell short of that. Again, why you propose this today? Because they fell short of some things. And every board member here knows that that's the case. But these companies, it's not just West Bay, okay? It's not just one well that sits close to my home, okay? It's not just one greedy landowner. We need more of a plan, a collective plan. I'd ask for more votes on these things. 6 months, I really think, is not a long time. I wish it did have more teeth. I understand why you want to present something that will fly versus something that's going to get picked apart. But this is a Macomb County issue. I really believe our Macomb executive should become more in charge of this. We are the guinea pigs in this whole process. We became the guinea pigs. And if you go back and you look at these 2 videos, the January and the December, when you talk to West Land Services Group and West Bay, it's going to make you sad because of what you know now. So I want you all to hear my appreciation and that you stood up for us today. I'm not happy with the crap that went down in my backyard for the last month and a half. And I am more concerned about other people in Washington and at 26 and Mound and everywhere else, my neighbors, those of whom I do not know, that I'm not sure they want this operation in their community. But in that December meeting, you asked how much money can that yield, and they threw out a number at you. Mr. Gibson threw out a number at you. That opened your eyes. I get it. But we need to look at the morality of it, and where do we want it? Maybe it's not a Macomb thing at all, and we may give up a lot of money doing it. That's a decision that has to be made. That's why I don't think it's just the Shelby Township thing. I think it's a Macomb County thing. I think it's a bigger thing. It was joked about as well with Mr. Gibson. We didn't hit a cow yet. Well, there you go, because we don't have any cows here anymore. It doesn't belong here, but still you gave it a shot. You gave it a shot, and it failed. You made us wait till the 11th hour for this. Last night I did not sleep. I didn't know what I was going to do today, and it was challenging, okay? Again, I look for your leadership going forward, but please don't think that I'm commending you for your actions, okay? Thank you very much, though.
Very much.
Hello, Debbie Hannon, Hawthorne Drive. Few questions for you. This one would be to the Township and MDEQ. I would like all of us to have ready access to know what any incident that happens in the operation at 25 and DeQuinder and any related pipeline, processing, so forth. Jack, sorry, I'm a little shaky. Jack Lanigan had said that if we want such information, we would need to go through the Freedom of Information Act to get that. And that's a very slow process. So is there something that can be done that we could go to a website like that, know everything that's going on, every small incident, whether it's a leak, an injury, anything of that nature? Second question, has the Township, anyone at the Township, done a complete investigation of West Bay to this point, whether they've done every single thing legitimately? Because I'm wondering if there's something that's been done that was not totally legal or totally appropriate, and maybe we could halt something based on that. As far as the burning of gas at either the drill site or the processing facility, is there something the Township can do once they start burning that gas? We've got the flares in the sky. I understand there's a lot of related noise. Can the Township do something to shut that down? And finally, I want to say that I agree with everybody else in this room. We do need to do something for the existing well site, and it just feels like you guys are not doing everything in your power to do that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming up. What we're doing right now, I think we've already talked about. I am sending a letter every 2 weeks. I'm emailing every 2 weeks the MDEQ, and we will be getting responses every 2 weeks. Of course, we're going to ask our question a little differently, but yeah, that'll be going out. But I'll tell you what, one thing I'm going to do. Even though we've been putting everything on a website, every piece of information we get goes on a website. I think what we'll do, and that was a good suggestion, I think what we will do is take your idea and have a special section on our website, which will be named something like oil, gas drilling / exploration. So that way it'll be easy to get to, and when you open up our website on the front page, we'll somehow figure out a very easy way to get to the information so you don't have to fish around and look for it. It's easy now because all the information practically on a website, the most current is, I mean, everything happens to be about oil drilling. But at some point in the future, when there's not as much current news, you know, it may be harder to get to it. So we will redesign the front page and have a special section so that anytime you want to get to what has happened, transpired, for example, in the notices that we sent out to the MDEQ, you will be able to get that quite readily. Anything else you can think of, Mr. Fitch? There was something about a FOIA.
All I want to say is we're not going to make you go through the FOIA process. I mean,
excuse me, you have to come up here.
While he's walking up, I want to say we've already asked for it. The document's called Reports of Spill or Leakage.
Okay, right. Yeah, that's one of the reports. But we won't make you go through the FOIA process.
Excuse me 1 second. Now, that's the report we're asking for every 2 weeks. Is that correct? Is that correct, Mr. Huth?
Yes.
Okay, good. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry I missed that some of myself, but
Yeah.
There's a report of spills. We'll provide any of those to you. We will also, you want an update on applications for flow lines and production facilities, we'll provide that to you. We won't make you go through the FOIA process. You know,
Okay.
it's just.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. We've got one more here. Yes. Oh, you have been patient, sir.
Okay, yes, there were, if I may respond to Mrs. Hanna while this young man's walking up. Her question, her additional question was if there's gas flare-ups at the site and if there's nuisance created by the processing facility, does the township have the ability to respond to that? And the answer is yes, we do. That is an absolute nuisance that we've talked about earlier. This moratorium is not limiting our right to use other methods that we have or other tools that we have. So the answer is yes, we do have a right to respond to that.
My apologies, ma'am. I was a little hasty in calling this gentleman up. Now I'll call you up, and thank you for being patient.
Question about whether
The question from the resident is, was there a complete investigation done of West Bay? For example, do we know for certain that they're the adequate distance away from the residents for their drilling operation? The MDEQ is initially charged with that type of investigation, and my recollection was that, in fact, the first application, they did not meet the requirement in terms of distance from the residential, and that was denied and then reissued, if I understand it correctly. Going forward, the township has not, it's a tough question for me to answer. If West Bay is doing things that are not allowed, we are going to respond with reasons why we need to control their activities there. So it's going to be ongoing, our view of their activities. So that will continue.
Sir, you're the last one. Go ahead.
Dave Carlesimo, 2717 Hawthorne Drive in Creekside. In the December 3rd meeting when West Bay was here, they were proposing the lease agreement with the township. Mr. Grott brought up a situation with the well behind Eisenhower. He asked the person that was here specifically how they handled the cleanup and the closure of that well, and he could not answer him. Mr. Grott had to answer him that they left it in a mess. And he had no idea of that. The person from West Bay who's doing the well on the same street with Rob had no answer to that. He had no idea how they closed the well or anything like that. Mr. Grott knew that they left it in a mess. So my question to you is, how is that going to be prevented for this well, and why were there not any other follow-up questions from the rest of the board to him in regards to that well being closed?
Okay, Mr. Root.
Well, the township and the state have the ability that if the well is left as a mess to respond either by, if the state didn't act, of course the township would through judicial intervention. The other question is difficult for me to respond to. Why weren't they asked more questions? Everybody, I'm sure, myself included, if we could turn back the clock, would ask more questions, no doubt about it.
Could have, should have. I'm the first one to say, wish I would have, and I should have. So those are some questions that we could have asked and wish we would have. Okay, I just want to bring it up to the board, but before I do that, Mr. Huth, here's what I definitely would like to do. You know, there were a lot of ideas that have been presented about putting some pressure on other activities and maybe doing some other things, and we've got some notes that we need to go through. I really hope the board passes that moratorium tonight. I think that's the first step. But would it be okay if in a week, or maybe a week and a half from now, whenever we can, maybe 4 days from now, I don't know, but whenever we can, to simply have another meeting with all you folks probably right here in Township Hall, to discuss all the activities, all the possibilities that we can do, and perhaps you can make some more recommendations. Right now, up to this point, this is the very best that we can do with all the work that Mr. Jim Olson and Mr. Rob Huth and your entire law firm have done. But there may be some other ideas and some other things that we can do. And I know I'll be talking to many of you, and perhaps we'll come up with some more ideas. But would it be okay? I really want another meeting like this in a week and a half to discuss anything new that we come up with. And does that sound sensible to you? I know it's a lot of work, and maybe we may say there's nothing more we can do. I think there is. I hope there is, and I think we have to see. What's your thinking?
I'm not going to say what I first thought.
Okay, I want you to do that.
But I mean, the reality is, I'm meeting with Mr. Olson's firm. They're coming down Thursday from Traverse City. Yes, we're going to need to respond. Just getting to the moratorium, one of the gentlemen said, "Why did we get this moratorium at the last minute?" Well, it really took that much effort to get it. In fact, I even reworked it after I sent it out. So I'm concerned to rush to make a deadline in a meeting that you mentioned 4 days or 7 days.
Or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, I don't know.
That would be much more reasonable with a plan, rather than just saying, hey, look, we've done something. If it's not well thought out and researched, it's going to make people happy, but it's going to be a loser for us in the long run. So let's try and do it right.
Folks, the reason I don't want to say 2 weeks is because maybe we'll have something in a week. And I don't want to say 3 or 4 days because it might take 2 or 3 weeks. So I'll tell you what, I think that's okay. But there are some other things that we could probably do. I hope there is, but we're willing to give you as much time as you need to look into it. But for tonight, I hope we can at least pass this moratorium as a first step to, finding a solution for this problem. Is that? I'm seeing everybody kind of saying yes. Is that okay for tonight? For tonight, everybody okay with that? Okay. Board members, if there's any more discussion, great. Otherwise, let's get this thing done and just vote. And that to be a roll
I just
call.
have, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I did have a couple of comments, if I may.
Go ahead. Yep.
Just in regards to future, I think the board maybe can have some input on that next meeting, because I think we've heard a lot about we have tools in our toolbox, but I think maybe we need to be a little more proactive, because we kind of said we can hear from all, but maybe there's something we can do to assign someone to make sure it's monitored so that it's not, we know that it's creating nuisances at the same time the residents know. So that maybe could be in the plan. I wanted to clear one thing up. West Bay has been here for years. They were here long before they ever came to this board to ask for us to sign the lease. They had been here. We didn't invite them here. Unfortunately, they had been here. What we did do is we did not realize the impact. Certainly, we did not realize the impact. I think Mr. Stathik has said it. Had we have known, we would not have signed those leases. But signing those leases had nothing to do with that's going on at the La Chirco site. Had we have not signed the leases, that drilling would have still gone on there. So having to do it over, I'm sure I would have not approved it. But we have what we have.
Mr. Chairman. So let me be very clear about this next meeting. Don't know when it'll be, 2-3 weeks, don't know, but this next meeting will have hopefully more ideas. But tonight, we need to pass this moratorium as a first step. Does anybody have anything to add?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have a question for Mrs. Filer, if that's okay, through the chair.
Go ahead.
Have you received any notification prior to the oil rig going up in the middle of a subdivision before it was actually put up?
There was some communication with Joe Hill as it related to something going in at the La Chirco sub.
Because I'm a board member, I'm an elected official in this community, and I think we can all agree the middle of a subdivision is no place for an oil rig.
Well, of course not.
I'm not completely against drilling. I'll state that. But I was never put on notice that this oil rig was going to go up. I apologize to all of the residents. I sympathize with you. That's what I believe all of us board members should be telling you. And I believe we should be working with you, working with Mr. Olson, is it, Mr. Huth?
Yes.
And we should be doing everything we can to serve the people that we took an oath to serve.
And I think you're right.
And I'm glad that we're gonna pass the moratorium this evening, and I hope it passes. But this has to be the first step. This can't be the end of the road.
And Mr. Nightingale, I'm happy that you were smarter than Mr. Huth, and you were smarter than Mr. Stathakis, and you certainly were smarter than I was, because it just...
Mrs. Filer, don't put words into my mouth.
Hold on, everybody. Hold on.
If you guys want to have a public debate right now, we will.
Any other? Okay, come on, guys. That's enough. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Crow.
I'm still. I will vote, of course, for the moratorium, but I'm still focusing on this industrial district. Is it possible that the processing plant would be located in industrial district?
Yeah. Yes.
So why are we excluding industrial district from this moratorium? That's exactly what we want to do, don't we? Don't we want to make this difficult for?
The attorney gave you that reason.
Oh, wait, Mr. Vire. I know, and attorneys are not always right. Even though I have a great respect for Mr. Huth, but I want to ask this question. If we exclude this industrial district from our moratorium, that means they can pursue it and place this processing plant right there on 26 and Mount. I think it would only make sense to make it even more difficult. Don't we want to stop this going forward? And again, I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm just trying to find a comment.
You mean like the other trustee?
No, he has support over here, Mr. Vire. If we can,
Please, Mr. Chairman, can I?
Go ahead, Mr. Groh. Go ahead.
Kind of scrap what we have.
I still have. Thank you, but I still have the floor, and I want to ask Mr. Huth. I know you answered a question that we, if we are sued or whatever, but this is, I think we're missing a point here. And I think the point being here that's exactly what we want. We want to include the district, industrial district, so they cannot continue with this processing plant on 26 Mile and Mount. So, Mr. Huth, through the chair, can you please address this for us, please?
Well, if we were going to accomplish what you're seeking to do, the first thing that would have to change is the moratorium's language with respect to the activity you're prohibiting. Right now, the moratorium is not addressing the processing facility. So even if we struck the language regarding the industrial district, you'd have to put in the processing language. My concerns, I'll be brief, is the more you try to make this moratorium do, the less likely we are going to have ability to defend it. Okay?
Can we, Mr. Chairman, again, through Mr. Huth, can we, I know, hold on a second. Can we at least, Mr. Huth, agree that this is a first step, but we can look into some improvements and continue to?
Already said. Absolutely. In fact, the best way to get your arms around your concern is likely not through the moratorium. It's through our township zoning ordinances we have already in place.
That's what I was just
I agree with you. Your goal is, I share your goal, but I'm afraid if you try to accomplish it by this moratorium, everything we've started to do tonight will be tossed out. So I share your goal.
And I just want to say, Mr. Huth, you and I had that conversation before the meeting, and you did say the zoning laws might be applicable in this situation more than a moratorium. So that might be a first step, but you're saying do not make this part of the moratorium, at least tonight, but we could possibly take it a step further and attack that with our zoning laws. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you very much. One more question, Mr. Chairman. Don't we have leases with Riverbends and another facility, Mr. Huth? I think you misspoke when you said we don't.
No, I'm not. I am not. No, I'm not aware of any leases with Riverbend.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I can answer that as the Parks and Rec guy. There's been a number of people that have approached us. They want to build soccer fields. They want to do everything. If we do anything with Riverbends other than passive recreation, I think it reverts back to the state. So there's nothing going on in Riverbends.
I'm just completely, I don't want to misstate anything. I am not aware of it.
We'll look into that. We'll look into that. Anything else? Let's go ahead and take a roll call vote on this.
Sure. Paula Filer made a motion.
Yes.
Stan Groth, yes. Nick Nightingale.
Yes.
Rick Staffikas.
Yes.
Paul Weier.
Yes.
Doug Wozniak.
Yes.
And Michael Flynn.
That's yes.
All right. Motion passes unanimously.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say one thing. Thank you very, very much for everything you've done up to this point. All these ideas that we're talking about, 90% of them are yours, not ours. We realize that. We want you to keep the heat up, not only on us, but on everybody, every lever you have. We want you to continue going out there and speaking your piece and standing up for what we all believe needs to be done. So I want to thank you very much for coming here. And by the way, this has been a great meeting. There's been a lot of good input, been going a lot back and forth. It's great stuff, well behaved, and I just appreciate the input. So on behalf of the entire board, thanks for everything, folks, and we will see you soon. And don't forget about tomorrow. Tomorrow at 6:30, I understand we got a great speaker coming in, and then at 8 o'clock, hopefully we'll get some news from West Bay as to what's happening or not happening with that oil well. We do need to be out of it's Plaza Grande at 10:30, so hopefully we'll get everything done before 10:30. Thank you very much, everybody.